Test, test, hello. Okay. Now, need to add an audio output. Test, test, hello. Okay. Audio's coming in clear. Test, test, hello. Okay, so this seems to like it should work. Perfect. Let's go.
Genuine dishonesty. But it's never based on them being correct. It's amazing. Anyway, hold on.
Lawsuit is not something you get to accept or reject like the word gay.
Yes, it is. Well, Mr. CLEs don't have love. Let Charlie be a light beaming in the Tinfoil Hat Society. You wouldn't go in the ring just to take a shit. Mike TJK. But seriously, we're proud of you, counselor. Thank you. Thank you. I'm proud of you guys, too. All right, here we go. Because when you're proud of me, you're correct. And I love it when you guys are correct. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. So this is the introduction. This is, again, the reply memorandum in support of preliminary hearing. Bind over. Defendant does not challenge the substance of the evidence, demonstrating that he was the person who crawled to the sniper's perch on the Losi building rooftop, fired the fatal shot that killed Mr. Charlie Kirk, hid the rifle in a wooded area, got rid of some of the clothing he was wearing, and told his roommates to delete their texts about the shooting. They don't dispute that at all. Not once in their preliminary hearing.
Oh,
They have
I do need
general statement saying
to refill my mana potions real quick.
he merely asserts the repeatedly rejected claim that the overwhelming evidence establishing some of these facts could not be introduced as reliable hearsay at the preliminary hearing. Defendant therefore raises no valid challenge to the evidence supporting count one, as at least murder. By the way, do you think the prosecution isn't watching? Do you think the prosecution isn't watching the commentary about this? Maybe just on Twitter. Who knows like what they're watching? But let's look at the sentence. We have overwhelming evidence. That's a big fuck you to Candace Owens, to Baron Coleman. That's the state saying we have the overwhelming evidence. Fuck you. This also. Count one as at least murder. What does that sound like? We charged him with murder, you fucking dummies. He is charged with murder. Candace Owens was so blatantly incorrect on that. It's frustrating that Andrew Wilson didn't possess the requisite lexicon to feel like he doesn't speak the language of law. Maybe the language of love, I don't know. But he doesn't speak the language of law, so he wasn't able to, in the moment, say, no, listen, you don't understand. Murder's a lesser included offense. He is charged with murder. But give me just a second. It's aggravated murder. I know. But we're just talking. He didn't have an opportunity.
Oh, fuck.
So Candace capitalized on it. All Candace did was hold up a giant penitent.
I need to recharge my Theurgic amulets. Got it.
And she was tricked off by a bunch of sycophantic people who believe what she says because they are also, we'll say ignorant to be polite. Ignorant. They're also ignorant. But he was charged with murder. Murder is part of aggravated murder. The prosecution is rubbing that in all of their faces. Of course they are. They're doing so because this argument is really stupid. Of course he's charged with murder. I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's a big fuck you.
I could technically manage with an hour 40, but I'll definitely forget to recharge them while I refill, so we'll just do it now.
Okay, I've tampered with witness.
Okay, there we go. All right. Jonathan says rifle was on his back, pack over the butt, and the barrel down his pants and butt crack would explain that odd walk. Tyler Robinson was readjusting it. Well, either that or he had to tape his dick to his ankle, right? Like, something's going on. Something is wrong with this picture. I walk like such a bag. Bitter sweetheart. Member for 9 months says, it's a lot, baby. It's happy reinstatement. We love you. Oh, I love you back. Thanks. Tala and Z sent some jewels. Appreciate that. Josh, member for 9 months. Very
Come
back.
on.
Queen of Law 2.
Me through.
Didn't give a fuck to look at the case. That's why he looks so bad. That's nonsense. That's nonsense. He's just a hired gun for TVUSE and the ZOs. You can think that all you want. I don't really care if he is or not. But saying he didn't look into the case is nonsensical. He made more cogent points about the case than Candace did. The only place Candace won, she was wrong. And that was on the charge. That was on the charge. She got overly pedantic on the charge. And Lamau, it's an internet debate, who fucking cares, is funny. She won by being funny. But that's literally the only point in the entire debate that in any way, went in her favor. Everything else was Andrew Wilson lecturing her, even though she spoke almost twice as much as him. Then he didn't look into the case. It's silly. He knew plenty of facts about the case. He was imprecise on one irrelevant item, which is aggravated murder. Notice what Candace did. Well, I wanted to talk to you about aggravated murder, but if you don't know that it's called aggravated murder, how can I? Candace, you just sat and for 2 hours talked to someone about subjects you have no knowledge of. He educated you. You could have educated him on aggravated murder. I think he already knew about it. He just didn't say it in the moment. But I ultimately don't care. I don't, like, Andrew Wilson, I don't have any hate for the guy, but he's not like my homie. Like, we're not buddies or whatever. I'm on his side on this in general, but not because, like, of our long-standing history of bro jobs or anything. That's beside the point. But he didn't look so bad. That's the weird thing. Candace looked awful, except for that one moment. And you know how we all know that that's true? It's because that's the only moment that you heard about in the entire debate from Candace Owens. The only thing that you heard from Candace Owens is her call him out on saying murder versus aggravated murder. But she didn't follow up by debating him on the aggravated murder. She said she was going to, but Candace Owens always said she's going to do something and then doesn't. She's an embarrassment. If I were a black person, and I am half black, if I were a black person, I would be ashamed. I would be ashamed. I would call her profane words. Maverick Cuba says, what will you say if Tyler is found innocent? I'll say that the jury found him innocent. I don't think that's going to happen. They can. Absolutely. Said over and over. Right now, we should believe.
There's no such thing as a finding of innocence, though. There's a finding of guilt or no finding of guilt.
We should feel like he's going to prison. He should look guilty. Even if he's not, he should look guilty. If he doesn't look guilty right now, the prosecution's not doing their job. It is nonsensical to think that after a probable cause hearing, someone looks not guilty. Why are we doing the case if they look not guilty? He looks guilty. The defense has a trial to challenge any narrative that they want or to raise their own competing narrative. Maybe they will. I don't think they're gonna. And right now, we have no reason to believe that they will. We have nothing. That could be because they're holding their cards close to their chest. From us, from the public. Which doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to not defend Tyler Robinson publicly. If he is not guilty, if Tyler Robinson is actually not guilty, you should be defending him. His public image is at stake. If he's not guilty, he has to live after this. And a whole lot of people are going to believe he murdered Charlie Kirk. No matter what you do. So your job as defense counsel is also to help with his public reputation. And they're not. They're not doing anything like that. The only thing they've done is present an argument mitigating the death penalty. And that's about it. Now they have time, so they may do it at trial.
Come on.
But it's a strange thing because there's no restriction on the defense. Doing some things, challenging some narratives to make their client look a little bit better in public. I'm not saying they need to release a bunch of evidence against the judge's orders or anything like that. Some advocacy outside the courtroom. a statement that our client maintains his innocence. That statement doesn't exist. Why not? Why not? That's the safest statement in the world. Tyler has not pled guilty. He might. But there's a reason why they haven't made a statement that he's maintaining his innocence. Because he's probably already in negotiations to not maintain his innocence. Here's a misunderstanding. The prosecution in a trial often knows if someone did it or didn't do it before trial. They know what the defense's strategy is. They know what the defense's evidence is most of the time. Sometimes there's some surprises, but rare. They know. They know he's guilty. The prosecution is not going to be surprised if Tyler Robinson says he's guilty. They're not going to be surprised if they win. They may be surprised if they lose because they know that he's guilty. In fact, they probably know that his defense believes he's guilty too. They're still going to go and fight, and the defense can raise all of the proper defenses. He's entitled to that. It's his goddamn right as a murdering American. But everybody knows. The people who don't know are the people out here. Like, in this case, it would do nothing of obvious harm for Tyler Robinson to maintain his innocence through a statement from the defense. Nothing. Unless they're negotiating with the prosecution. And that would piss the prosecution off. Because if the defense wants to negotiate with the prosecution for a plea deal, there is no way they can inflame the insane conspiracy crowd. Because I'm going to tell you, and I am not putting this on the conspiracy theorists. I am not. I am not. I don't believe in this. This is not my opinion. However, this is reality. Those prosecutors are looking at the crazy people like Diligent Denizen, Stu Peters, Lionel Media. They're looking at not them specifically, but they're looking at the crazy people who watch them. If the defense riles up the insane people, every one of those prosecutors and the defense attorneys, they all know their lives are immediately at risk. And this isn't like a joke. This isn't a hyperbolic statement or whatever. This is not true in every case. This is a major case. You get some fucking whack job who fully believes that Tyler Robinson is not guilty because Candace Owens and Baron Coleman convinced him of that. And then he takes the extra step. This is not their fault. This is 100% not Candace or Baron's fault. I'm not accusing them. I never would. I've been accused of this. It's not true. They're just doing their thing. They're not inciting people to this. But crazy people are crazy. And when you have enough numbers, you have a high enough chance that a crazy person becomes a real possibility. And that crazy person might be fighting for the innocence of Tyler Robinson hard enough to murder somebody. And that's not a joke. And again, it is not any commentator's fault. They should all full-throatedly voice their opinions. None of them, I've seen nobody call for anything like that, and I will never accuse them of having that responsibility. They don't. They don't have that. What I'm saying is that the people who are doing the lawyering, they may not hold the same opinion I do. They may be looking at the conspiracy people going, they're going to rile up some fucking nut job and he's going to come in here with an AR and blast us all to pieces. That's a real fear. That's a real fear. When something gets large enough, the statistical likelihood of a crazy becomes higher, like obviously. So, with that, there's no way the defense is going to rile up. There's no way they're going to rile up the public to Tyler's innocence if they're negotiating a plea deal, because the prosecutors will shut them fucking down immediately. Say, no, your boy's going to the death penalty. We're going to prosecute this to the maximum if they maintain his innocence. But they haven't done that, and that's why. You can call me wrong. Nazar says, Barron's take said the introduction is tainted and abuse of the legal process. Of course, he blocked me asking hard questions. That's because Baron Coleman is retarded. This is not tainting in any way with my take. And it's certainly not abuse of the legal process. What an idiot. What a fucking dummy. Maverick Cuba says, Andrew Wilson couldn't remember 7 charges. How do you know? He only had the chance to say 1. But who cares? They weren't debating the 7 charges. They're not sitting there debating obstruction of justice. The question is, did he kill Charlie Kirk? That was the debate. They laid that out at the beginning. Instead, he had a secret special bot boy text that goes against what TVUSA had said prior. The text is irrelevant. The text was for clicks, obviously. Even if Tyler is guilty, TPUSA sunk the brand how they handled it. There was no saving TPUSA after Charlie died. TV USA has to evolve into something new, or everybody has to get new jobs. They don't want to get new jobs. They want to try and carry on their friend's legacy, and they want to keep their jobs that paid them pretty well, I'm guessing. They're going to try and maintain it. They're probably going to fail. Charlie's not there. They need another Charlie. I don't know who that would be. Who's going to do it? Maverick Cuba says, why would the prosecution care about crazy online conspiracy theories if they were focusing on a court case? Because the crazy people might kill them, dummy! What do you think? What do you think? What are you talking about? Prosecutors get murdered. I don't know if you know this. Like, that happens. Prosecutors are more at risk of getting murdered if people believe they're prosecuting an innocent person. Facts are facts when it comes to court. Yeah, the prosecution is presenting facts. Defense is not. That's the thing. Why? I'm telling you why. Here's where you're going to run into an issue arguing with me on this subject. You're going to argue something that isn't happening. I'm not arguing with you. I'm telling you what's true and correct because I'm correct. The defense is not maintaining publicly Tyler's innocence because if they do, the prosecution won't deal with them very well on a plea agreement. 1 second. What's up? Yeah, it is. No. White aliens. Perfect. That's true. Yes, we will definitely. What is it? Never mind. Lesbian space princess. Bye. I love you. Good night. Okay. Sorry. See, this is the thing. Azure says, I would hire Nick Mercator to replace Charlie. I couldn't. What? There's some history, right? Like, I don't think Charlie ever had much cocaine. Maybe he did. Maybe. But I don't want to follow in the footsteps of an assassinated guy. If I wanted to be Charlie Kirk, right? Like I would do more live events like that. Like if I wanted to be him, I would do that. But I don't. I don't need to be hired.
Oh, come on. I don't want to go upstairs with this guy, but I guess I have to.
Just asking questions, right? People can follow the model. I don't want to do that. I've never wanted to do.
Okay, let's head south again.
I don't want to be.
But I may actually need this
I don't
one.
want anything to do with English. I have a wife and kids to go home to. Trump did too. Now he believed in his brand and message and everything to a point where he was confident in what he did. He was okay with the risk. I don't want that smoke. I really don't. I want to go home and not be dead. That's my goal. That's my goal. Right-wing extremist says if Tyler pleads out, we don't see the evidence laid out in court, they will say the fix is in. It will linger forever. Linger more in. It's going to linger, yeah. It's going to linger no matter what happens. There is no outcome.
I got out of that one pretty easy.
People have been radicalized by the narrative. It's not going to happen. There's now some cost fallacy. It's too important. It's critical. Tyler was so great. Half these people don't even never liked him in the first place.
This stupid talk chat is a pain in the ass. So much Candace got bored and started yelling about murder nuances. So much for delineating degrees of murder is like delineating Nick on X or Coke. JK.
The answer was yes.
Just the fact it was a hearing and not a trial.
Yeah. And again, Andrew wasn't there to speak law. Candace wasn't either, but she pretended to be at the end. Candace wasn't there to say anything. And maybe that was the smartest play in the book, right? Like she made $300K just by sitting there, being retarded. Judy Ruff says, the most the defense can do is try to get that penalty off the table. They have not argued his innocence. Yeah. And they could try to argue his innocence, right? Like nothing's stopping them other than it's going to make the plea agreement really difficult if they try to do that.
Why would they plea if he's innocent?
Prosecution's pissed off, not an active defense. That's coming up. But here we go. Sorry, I talked way too much there. No valid challenge to the evidence supporting count 1, at least, murder. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury. Candace didn't know this count, by the way. Candace said this so improperly that it wasn't this crime or another crime that it could be, which is discharge of a deadly weapon. Candace said felony discharge of a weapon. That's not a crime. That's not a crime in Utah. There's felony discharge of a firearm with the enhancer causing serious injury, or there's discharge of a deadly weapon, which presumably isn't always felony, which is why it's not felony discharge of a deadly weapon. Candace got this count wrong. Her criticism of Andrew Wilson applies exactly the same here. She was completely wrong if he was wrong. Of course, neither of them were wrong. They were speaking colloquially. Who cares? Counts 3 and 4 obstruction of justice, or count 5, tampering with the witness. Defendant's challenge to the aggravating circumstances for count 1, that he knowingly created a great risk of death to another, is based on his misrepresentation of both the evidentiary standard at the preliminary hearing and the test for establishing the aggravating circumstance. Now, here's where they take them to a little bit of a legal clinic. As for the evidentiary standard, defendant erroneously asserts that a magistrate engages in speculation when he chooses between reasonable inferences that supports guilt and a competing innocent inference. I said this reading the other thing. That's not speculation, just because if there are two reasonable inferences, both exist. The deference goes to the state. That's how it goes. That's not speculation. Speculation is to create something out of no evidence. But if there are two reasonable inferences that are competing, it's not speculation to pick one. They cited a case that said it was. They're going to say that that case is overturned. I think they also probably cited it incorrectly. Anyway, but here we go. Let's see. The Utah Supreme Court has rejected that logic, a fact that the Utah Court of Appeals has repeatedly recognized. Defendants' counsel ignore this controlling case law and have therefore violated their ethical duty of candor to the court. That lie. Whoa. Okay. It's poor form. It's poor form to call out another attorney on an ethical violation unless you're really pissed off. You don't want to be an edge case. This, I think, honestly, is an edge case. I don't think they violated their ethical obligations. I mean, you have an ethical obligation to be correct in using your citations, but lawyers miscite things all the time. Like they miss something, they don't find proper overruling precedent, etc. Like stuff gets missed. Stuff gets missed. Sometimes on purpose. But they have a duty of candor to the court. That's true. Them calling them out for violating their duty is them saying that they know this, they ignored it intentionally. It's an intentional misrepresentation, not failing. It's not them making a mistake. The duty of candor means you have candor with the court. You're honest with them. You're fully honest with them. You fail your duty of candor, it's because you're dishonest. That's a wow. This is what I'm talking about. That's a pissed off prosecutor, right? And I think there's a reason to be pissed off. This is one of the highest profile cases that's going to happen this year, maybe this decade, right? The prosecutor doesn't want a weaselly, limp-dick defense. They don't want that. They want the fullest defense. They want the most robust defense. They don't want some bullshit ineffective assistance of counsel claim coming up on appeal. Tyler Robinson is almost guaranteed going to appeal with ineffective assistance of counsel. It'll be pointless. He clearly has effective counsel, even if they lose. But they always do it. In every murder case, they always try ineffective assistance. Them fucking up a citation badly lends evidence down the road to ineffective assistance. It's not conclusive evidence, it's not full proof, but it is. It's like they mess this up. Prosecution can smell Nestor a couple miles away. You just smell for the cake, right? They can smell her doing this. Or whoever, but the team. They know. They're like, hey, wait a minute. No, you're not getting away with this thing. They're working to make this perfect prosecution. They're trying to close every single door. Have the defense be sloppy like this, that's kind of a slap in the face. They're not taking it. It's funny. They're calling them out now. They're doing it here, which is it's not common. It's not like the rarest thing ever. It's not common. Prosecutors don't do this unless they actually think it happened, because it's kind of poor form if you're just calling it out. All right. I don't fully agree with the prosecutors. I like it. So I like popping for you guys. Anyway. I don't necessarily agree with the prosecutors here, but you can tell that they're pissed. All right, here we go. Contrary to defendant's argument, this mic might be on its way out like my last one. That would be fucking annoying. I'm gonna have to get that fixed or replaced. All right. Contrary to defendant's argument, these cases establish that when a fact finder chooses between reasonable inferences at a trial, it is properly fulfilling its fact finding role, not speculating. Thus, even at trial, a fact finder is free to choose between reasonable inferences. Yes, and I think they go a little too far here. They're not at trial. This isn't relevant at trial. Picking between reasonable inferences. They should have just stuck with at the probable cause hearing. If there are two reasonable inferences, the fact finder doesn't even have a choice. The fact finder cannot choose the reasonable inference that goes in favor of the defense. They can't. It's probable cause hearing. All inferences go in favor of the prosecution. All reasonable. So, if there's competing reasonable inferences, the one that most favors the state, that's the one. And the magistrate is not allowed to choose the other one. It's not like, oh, well, maybe. No. That's that. So, it's definitely, it's so categorically not speculation. It can't be. Because they don't even think about it. They can't. Their hands are legally tied to choosing the one in favor of the state. That's the rules of probable cause. That's the system. This is a preliminary hearing where the court does not sit as a fact finder. Oh, hey, see? Instead, this court is duty bound to draw all reasonable inferences in the state's favor. Okay, look, I read this late at night, and I didn't read all of it, so I'm glad they have it. It is therefore even more apparent that in this proceeding there is nothing speculative about viewing all reasonable inferences in the state's favor. Correct. As for the great risk of death aggravating factor, defendant erroneously maintains that the test for establishing this factor depends on the presence of some minimum number of factors or circumstances. We saw that over and over. They're these three factors. It requires more than one shot. That's their main argument. More than one bullet being fired. That's not anywhere in there. That's just all of the citations that they have. But that's not actually laid out in specificity as they require. So they're saying that's wrong. In fact, the Utah Supreme Court has expressly disavowed such an analysis. Instead, the governing test is the one the statute provides, whether a defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another. The evidence here easily establishes at least probable cause to believe that the defendant did so when he intentionally fired his grandfather's high-powered rifle toward a crowd of thousands, several of whom were in the line of fire between him and Mr. Kirk. Indeed, the evidence is more than sufficient to support a finding beyond a reasonable doubt. Yes. You cannot fire at a crowd of 1,000 people or 3,000 people. No matter how precise you are, you cannot fire at a crowd of thousands of people and say you're not creating a risk of death just because you didn't hit anybody other than the person that you were trying to kill. I mean, good, I guess, that you got your target and no one else, but everybody there, from the distance he's firing, almost everybody in that crowd would be at risk. If he pulls too hard on the trigger and shifts it all, if he has some radial shift at 150 yards, a couple degrees difference can be quite a big distance. Anybody in, a cone in front of him is in the zone of danger. The only reason they weren't in danger is because he happened to shoot straight. Anything could have caused it to shoot not straight. Anything being real factors. He sneezes. I don't know. He gets nervous. He flinches.
The gun is
something
off.
causes the bullet to dust in the barrel, right? Anything that interferes with the shot happening makes the bullet go somewhere other than where he wants it. This is marksmanship 101. We all know where we want. If the bullets all just went where we wanted, everybody would be a fucking expert marksman, but most people are not. And there's a bunch of things that mitigate it, right? Having a long rifle laying down in a sniper prone position, having something to rest the rifle on, really helps eliminate a lot of that. But we don't know. We don't know that he's gonna not fuck up. In fact, he's likely to fuck up. In fact, shooting in the neck is likely a fuck up. There's no way Tyler Robinson was aiming for here. Who would do that?
He was aiming for the head and he didn't account for gravity.
Who would do that? Right? He's either aiming center mass or he's aiming at his head. Probably his head, because that's the dumber thing to do. And there's bullet drop and stuff, and if you don't know, snipers have a rangefinder, they have someone who's telling them about the wind, they help them calculate out, and they adjust their equipment, and they adjust their aim, and they take the shot. Based on a lot of training about all of those factors and how they affect everything. Tyler Robinson doesn't appear to have any of that training, and he doesn't have a sniper buddy that we know of. He doesn't have a sniper buddy telling him any of these factors. So he takes a shot. A reasonable assumption is that he was going to try and shoot at the head, and he hits it in the neck because he doesn't know how to calculate bullet drop at the distance. He probably doesn't know the distance off top. He's not doing this now. Most likely, he could be. But he also could have been shooting at the chest, and the sight could have been poorly sighted in. Could have been fortunate that he hit Charlie at all. Fortunate, for his purposes. Obviously not fortunate. We don't know. But there's no reason to believe that he was going to be accurate. He just ended up being accurate. And this is the problem with so much legal analysis, is that you're always looking with the benefit of knowing the outcome. So you're like, well, of course no one was in the zone of danger. Nobody got hit. Like, yeah, but they might have. Literally anything happens. His balls itch at the wrong point. He squeezes a round off and he pops from the security guards instead. Anything could cause that shot to go wrong. It just didn't. That doesn't mean it couldn't cause it. Have they proved it beyond a reasonable doubt? The aggravating factor? Yeah. Yes. At the pre-trial. And the reason they did is because it's an easy one to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The doubt that they attempt to raise in their the defense was literally that the state didn't prove that Tyler Robinson saw anybody else other than Charlie Kirk. Their narrative is that he pointed the rifle with his eyes closed towards Charlie Kirk, opened his eyes, only seeing through the sight and already being targeting on Charlie Kirk and not seeing anybody else. That's the defense's argument. Go back and read it. It's that fucking stupid. That's not reasonable doubt. It's also not based on anything. It's not based on anything at all. Based on common sense. On common sense, we know that he had to see other people. We also have, it's also not really true. We know he walked around down there. He talked to people down at the table. We know he knows people are around. But yes, that factor beyond reasonable doubt, that's not a hard factor. You shoot into a crowd of people. You shoot into a crowd of people, and you're putting other people in.
He's gonna be guilty on all charges. This is ridiculous.
The defense's legal argument could theoretically succeed, and that's that if the judge agrees that the Utah courts require more than one shot, which they don't, if the judge agrees with that, well, then they would win on that factor. But that's a legal factor, not a fact-based one, because they have no argument being shot anywhere other than into a crowd of people. Anyway, defendant's challenges to count 6, witness tampering for directing Mr. Twiggs not to talk to police, and 7, violent defense in a child's presence. This one also Candace got wrong. Likewise, improperly draw inferences in defendant's favor.
Oh, 13.4 is actually pretty good for 0 praise.
I think the witness tampering, maybe there's some doubt there. Maybe, because they're going with this purely altruistic theory, etc. Maybe, but like, for probable cause, though, you don't get to say that Tyler Robinson's statements were altruistic, because that requires you to draw an inference in favor of Tyler Robinson, and opposed to the state. The same statement can be read as altruistic and as interfering. If it can be read both ways, the state wins. They're right here. The defense tried it. You tried it. Okay, but they're wrong. It is the prosecutor's job to call them out. Speaking of calling out, we have Angel, the Aussie, gifting 5 memberships. Thank you so much, Angel.
I need to stop refilling my mana because I'm leveling up soon.
I'm targeting for tomorrow. Angel, the Aussie, said, hi, bye. Remember, for 44 months. See you later, Angel. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you. Finally, defendant also. Oh, wait. Sorry. Defendant's challenge to the victim targeting enhancement on count 7 similarly ignores the other. All right. Finally, defendant also misrepresents the holding in Apprendi versus New Jersey in arguing that the sentencing enhancements for committing a violent offense in a child's presence and targeting his victim must be proven now. Correct. That's not true. Neither enhancement implicates Apprendi because neither increases the maximum statutorily mandated punishment. And that's the thing people misunderstand about the enhancement. All right. The reason that aggravated murder is separate from murder, right, and the aggravating factor is
It's not separate.
in a separate statute is because it increases it from life without parole to death penalty. That's the thing. They've decided that if you increase the statutory maximum punishment, if you do that, then you need to give the person basically another chance to challenge it, right? That's how that works. However, if you're just enhancing the amount of punishment within the statutory maximum with the aggravating factor, if you're still within the same maximum, then you don't need it. It's not a separate statute. It's not a separate charge, right? So that's what we have. All right. Angel the Aussie gifting 5 more memberships. Thank you, Angel. I missed you, by the way. Nice to see you.
Wait, so there's no death penalty without aggravators? That's kind of stupid.
Take it's even debating the conspiracies. And you know what? The reason is that the conspiracies are unreasonable. They really are. I don't know how else to say it. Maverick Cuba says, Baron is a coal man. Candace is full of too much black girl magic, and Lionel is lying about his genetic lineage. Lionel? That guy isn't Jewish at all. Maverick Cuba says, I respect you and Owen Benjamin. You two seem to be the most rational on either side of this subject. Maybe one day you guys can talk about it. Clint is a Russell, Barnes is black, and Diva is a Mutt. Oh my gosh. I would talk to Owen Benjamin about it. I don't think we're going to agree on much. That's okay. I don't hate anything. Argument 1. Defendant misrepresents the governing evidentiary standard because he relies on an erroneous distinction between inferences and speculation that Utah Supreme Court has rejected. Defendant misrepresents the evidentiary standard that governs this preliminary hearing because he relies on an erroneous distinction between inferences and speculation from State versus Cristobal that the Utah Supreme Court soundly rejected over a decade ago in State versus Ashcraft. The Supreme Court explained in Ashcraft that when a jury chooses between reasonable inferences to reach its verdict, it does not engage in speculation. This is even more true at a preliminary hearing where the magistrate must draw all reasonable inferences in the state's favor. Right, there is no choice. But also, it's not speculation. Both things are true. It's not speculative, but also they have no choice, making it double secret plus non-speculative. Because he ignores the case law that rejects the logic on which his argument depends, defendant erroneously labels as speculation many of the state's arguments about the evidence and the reasonable inferences this court must draw from that evidence. For example, although the evidence demonstrates that a clear line of sight existed between defendant Sniper Birch and Mr. Kirk's seat, and 2, that others were near Mr. Kirk when defendant fired the fatal shot, defendant asserts this court would be engaging in speculation to infer from this evidence that defendant actually observed security personnel or others standing near or directly between him and Mr. Kirk. Similarly, although the evidence shows that defendant loaded his rifle with 4 cartridges and had previously done some target practice where he seldom hit the bullseye and sometimes missed the target completely, defendant asserts that it would be speculative to infer that he knew he could miss his target.
Everybody knows they can miss their target.
You challenge the facts, and the defense did challenge, like, how would you even fucking know that those were his targets? Wait, did they? Actually, I don't know if they did that. Maybe I saw that online. Like, how do you know it's his targets? Well, why didn't the defense say that? Now, it's probably because they know that the state can prove it. They can probably prove it to the testimony of Lance Swiggs or something like that. But who knows? Defendant relies on State versus Cristobal to justify his argument. Quoting Cristobal, defendant asserts that when evidence supports more than one possible conclusion, none more likely than the other, the choice of one possibility over another can be no more than speculation. That's dumb. That's so incorrect. I don't know how to even say it. Like, I can't believe the court wrote that down. I really would like to know the context. Maybe I'll look it up. Not right now, but like that's a crazy thing to say. Fact finders choose between assertions all the time, or choose between inferences all the time. They're the fact finder. That's what they do. They do it based on credibility. They do it based on a whole bunch of like whatever they want. That's what the jury does. The jury finds the facts between competing facts. All right, Utah Supreme Court rejected Cristobal's logic in Ashcraft, a fact that the Utah Court of Appeals has expressly and repeatedly recognized. These cases make clear that choosing between competing reasonable inferences is not speculation, but rather exactly what a jury must do. The defendant in Ashcraft argued that the existence of innocent inferences for his presence in a known drug area late at night with a large amount of cash rendered the evidence insufficient to support a jury verdict that he constructively possessed drugs. Consistent with the Court of Appeals reasoning in Cristobal, Ashcraft asserted that his jury engaged in speculation when it credited the inculpatory inferences from the evidence over the exculpatory ones. All right, this is, when they say circumstantial evidence, it's evidence that is based on circumstance. All right?
Amazing.
The circumstance surrounding that guy's drug possession, pretty strong. Pretty strong. Is it conclusive on its own? No. The jury has to decide if that's enough to eliminate their doubt. What doubt do they have in the case? We don't know. No idea. However, we know that he was convicted because the jury did think that those circumstances overcame any doubt they may have. Now the problem is, I'm going to use this like a teacher, even though I don't know, I have a feeling in my balls. Reasonable doubt.
Forgot to swap back to Plasmarine.
Something is the basis for the doubt. If there's nothing to base the doubt on, like no competing narrative, then juries don't really hold doubt. People think that the jury is going to poke holes, right, in their mind, in the narrative, and that's going to be doubt. But the jury doesn't. There's no lance for them to throw through the tapestry. They're not armed with anything to poke the holes. You have to help them. You have to help them. You have to show them either that that couldn't happen. It just doesn't, like, there's no way it can happen. Or you have to give them another thing to believe in. You're not required to by law. Don't mistake me. People always mistake this saying it's a requirement. No. It's just really helpful for the jury if you don't want them to believe your narrative to have another narrative. Most of the time, people don't. The Supreme Court rejected Ashcraft's argument, explaining that the fact that a court could identify an equally plausible alternative inference is not nearly enough to set a verdict aside. This is because law is well established that the existence of one or more alternate reasonable hypotheses does not necessarily prevent the jury from concluding that a defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I've talked about this in different contexts, primarily the ice shootings, because people are like, oh, well, the officer has to reasonably believe he's in imminent danger. This other officer doesn't believe that, and that officer is reasonable. Like, okay, that's a reasonable belief, but this officer could reasonably believe it. You have to prove that he could not have reasonably believed it. Now, if every officer ever testifies that they wouldn't believe it, then maybe. But the existence of multiple reasonable decisions, that's always. People reasonably disagree all the time. I think this way, you think that way. There's not an objective answer that we can find out. Then our subjective, reasonable assumptions prevail for each of us. They both coexist and they're fine. That's true here. Remember, the state has to overcome all of these reasonable doubts. But the doubt has to be reasonable. I mean, I say has to. The jury can just nullify the verdict, but the doubt has to be reasonable is the charge to the jury, and they take it pretty seriously. Okay. This is because the law is well established the existence of one or more alternate reasonable hypotheses. Oh, wait, I read that. Okay. Rather, the jury's exclusive province is to weigh the competing theories of the case in light of the evidence presented and the reasonable inferences drawn therefrom, and to conclude which one they believe. And here's a shocker. If they conclude in favor of the state, the reasonable inference that favors the state, then they've overcome their reasonable doubt. That's it. They've gone beyond their reasonable doubt. And that's something that people seem to misunderstand this as well. People are convicted while reasonable doubt exists. In fact, often reasonable doubt exists in the absence of a more reasonable guilt. I hope that makes sense.
Vaguely.
So guilty beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't mean eliminating the reasonable doubt necessarily. Oftentimes it does. But it also just means overcoming the reasonable doubt. You move beyond it. You've proved something beyond the reasonable doubt. You can technically, reasonable doubt can still exist because you can't make something not happen. Or you can't make an inference not exist, but you can show that one is so much more likely than the other that you've moved beyond it. And juries do this a lot. Juries convict while reasonable doubt exists.
That's a problem, though.
We've seen it happen. But the jury is convinced beyond that reasonable doubt. People misunderstand these words, I think, because
If jury nullification happens, the opposite can also happen.
Just like Maverick Cuba says, I just found it interesting. The left never knows it debates on the right, yet when I look to the left, they're all just waiting on the next to think. The next person? Alright, here we go. The Supreme Court's holding in Ashcraft, therefore, necessarily overruled the very logic from Cristobal, on which defendant now relies. The Court of Appeals has also recognized, as our Supreme Court in Ashcraft has since clarified, the fact that we can identify an equally plausible inference is not enough to set aside a jury verdict, to set a verdict aside. And here, that's exactly what I was just saying. That's exactly what I was just saying. The appeals court is saying, no, we see that an equally plausible alternative inference, that means equally reasonable, is not enough to set a verdict aside. So they're saying, look, no, we see that there is reasonable doubt here. However, the jury verdict overrides that reasonable doubt. Because the inference that the jury chose was this one. If they're competing equally and the jury says, we believe this one more, then they win. That's beyond reasonable doubt, by definition. People don't think of it that way. I'm guilty of not thinking of it that way, but that's what they're saying. So this is THM Misery, since of Jules. Oh, this microphone's pissing me off.
Question:
How does a black swan equal Rhine MU RPM 7 and Sigma I equal 80 E non Sigma? Abazit as skewed I frac some I what words on X are I's I RMU though Nan Sigma I R and they act like standard deviations don't matter. Lol.
Exactly. We have the Indomitable Green Skull sending some coins, thank you. Jacqueline Brent says, Nick, you were right, Candace Owens is just stupid. She told an interviewer dinosaurs were fake. Toy bones were made in China sweatshops and buried for Jews to find. Yeah, I mean, and now you said she was dumb. Like, I thought you said she wasn't smart. What are you talking about? That's what happened. Okay, and citing Wall, the Court of Appeals has repeatedly recognized that Ashcraft is a complete repudiation of Cristobal. Indeed, as this court's opinion in Wall made clear, we no longer view Cristobal's statement regarding equally plausible inferences as valid. The defendant completely ignores Ashcraft, and the Court of Appeals' decision recognizing Ashcraft's repudiation of Cristobal. If the existence of alternative inferences is not enough to justify setting aside a jury verdict of guilt, then it certainly is not enough to justify denying bind-over at a preliminary hearing. Correct. A jury is free to pick and choose reasonable inferences in reaching its verdict. A preliminary hearing magistrate is not. The magistrate must view all evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecution and draw all reasonable inferences in favor of the prosecution. At a preliminary hearing, the prosecution is not required to eliminate alternative inferences that can be drawn from the evidence in favor of the defense. Thus, viewing all reasonable inferences in the state's favor at a preliminary hearing is not speculation. It is precisely what the law requires this court to do. The defendant's argument otherwise is based on overruled case law that he refuses to acknowledge and bring to this court's attention. This blatant omission violates counsel's duty of candor to the court. Oh wait, I don't have this pulled up. I'm sorry. Here it is. I apologize. I'm looking at the document, not the window of being for once. So again, we go back to this failure of the duty of candor. They're calling out the defense here pretty hard. Like, the defense's citation overtly misstates the law. Not only does it fail to account for the fact that it was overturned, Ashcraft, it was overturned 11 years ago. Just the 11 years ago. Not only that, it runs contrary to the known rules of a preliminary hearing. And it runs contrary to basic criminal procedure. Basic. We know, or anybody reading the defenses, what did Barron say? Oh, we're going to have to watch. But anybody reading the defense's argument here, who knows the law, knows that was insane. The idea that they say, pick between the two, like if there's two inferences, like what do? You pick one. You pick the one you believe more than the other. That's it. That's the jury and the judge's job, if it's a bench trial. That's the jury's job. But here, in a preliminary hearing, where all inferences have to fall in favor of the state, there is no picking. It's just the one that favors the state. That's the answer, period. The existence of another one's irrelevant. All right, here we go. So, citing the rule, a lawyer must not knowingly or recklessly fail to disclose to the tribunal legal authority in the controlling jurisdiction directly adverse to the position of the client not disclosed by opposing counsel. Moreover, an inference is reasonable, as opposed to speculative, when it is based on evidence. As the Utah Supreme Court has acknowledged, there is no black line between inference and speculation, but a reasonable inference exists when there is at least a foundation in the evidence upon which the ultimate conclusion is based. While in the case of speculation, there is no underlying evidence to support the conclusion. Thus, a reasonable inference, not amounting to speculation, is a conclusion reached by considering other facts and deducing a logical consequence from them. As the state's opening memorandum demonstrated, and is further detailed below, all the inferences the state has identified are grounded in the evidence. They are not speculative, and they support bind-over on all counts. And I mean, honestly, you can never, they call them briefs, but they're never brief. But this is it. Like, in reality, that's all that needed to be said. The judge knows the law. Now, they're briefing it. The judge will use the briefs, etc. The judge knows this. The judge knows the law. Everybody knows the law on this one. This is not a mystery. Again, anybody who's in any way tried to convince you that the defense had a reasonable or good argument.
Give me dusters.
Is like
okay, cool. That's what I wanted.
They're wrong. I don't know why they are that wrong, but it's hard to calculate how incorrect they are. The defense's brief was written by people who know that they're going to lose that brief. They did their best. Their best just Facts, law are not on your side at this point. At any point, really. And the problem is, very simply, Tyler Robinson did it. Hardest fucking defendant on earth is the one who's guilty. Here we go, yeah. The Willimager is only hard to calculate because you're dumb. Yeah, I'm not good at math. Do I look fucking Asian to you? When properly construed, the evidence demonstrates a reasonable belief that defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another when he fired a high-powered rifle toward a crowd of thousands, including several who were in the line of fire otherwise in close proximity to Mr. Kirk. Just as he misrepresents the legal standard governing this preliminary hearing, defendant also misrepresents the standard for establishing the great risk of death aggravator. The existence of that aggravator does not require a minimum set of factual circumstances which must be present, as defendant claims. Nor is the test a multi-factor analysis, as defendant also claims. When the evidence is properly viewed under the test the Utah Supreme Court has actually endorsed, the evidence demonstrates a reasonable belief the aggravating circumstances satisfied here. And we know this because all of the defense's citations, which were voluminous, did not actually support their conclusions. Supporting their conclusions would be a stretch of the language, right? They weren't an opposite to them, but they weren't supporting. What they were doing was saying, well, the court said that this is the aggravating factor, therefore the aggravating factors analysis is limited to this circumstance. That's not how that works. That's not exploring the limit. The limit does not exist.
So my reasonableness of eating as much caption crunch with berries herein is notwithstanding the weight I will be in the morning? I like this crazy Candace logic. LOL.
Damn, that's... Oh no, another one.
Okay, defendant test for determining whether he knowingly created a great risk of death to another. In explaining and applying the great risk of death aggravator in State versus Sosa Hurtado, the Utah Supreme Court expressly stated that it was not establishing a multi-factor balancing test. They left that
Okay,
out.
run out.
They kind of left that out of their brief, I believe. Rather, the
I'm not talking
ultimate
to
test
myself,
is
I'm talking to this glue mall.
defendant knowingly created the great risk of death. That's it. That's the test. Did they create great risk of death and did they do it knowingly? That's it. The three factors that Sosa Hurtado Court identified to guide the application of the statutory test are simply a range of factors of possible relevance to the statutory inquiry as elaborated in our case law. In fact, the court repeated, we are not here establishing a multi-factor test. Why did the defense leave this out? Like, this is bad work. The considerations in Sosa Hurtado are non-exhaustive, and they are not the test. But like, the defense set it up as if Sosa Hurtado was the controlling. It's a controlling case on this, and how they determined it is how all of these cases are determined. No, completely wrong. Defendant ignores these portions of Sosa Hurtado. I can't believe that they didn't call them out for a duty of candor there, because they so grossly misrely on Sosa Hurtado in the defendant's. Like, they so misrelied on it that it's actually offensive. And they called them out before, but fuck me. Leaving out, the court repeatedly saying in the case, this is not a multi-factor test, but then presenting it as if it was, that's really devious work. Defendant also erroneously urges the court to construe the aggravating circumstance narrowly. The legislature has already narrowed the aggravator by requiring that a defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another. This court cannot apply its own narrowing gloss to that standard. Again, the ultimate test is the statutory test. Nor does the defendant's emphasis on language from other cases, that a defendant must create a high probability of death, modify the statutory standard. Which, by the way, that high probability isn't there. Great risk. Great risk does not mean high probability. It means if something goes wrong, someone is at great risk. If circumstances don't work out perfect, someone's at great risk. Usually, things work out at least close to how you want them to. So you can't say it's high probability, because high probability would mean high probability of failure. That's way too high of a bar for the aggravator. A high probability of death is just another way to say a great risk of death. I disagree with that. Other courts use the term high probability, therefore does not modify the statutory test. I mean, I agree that the statutory test is not modified by it. I think the court's saying that things high probability that's just going beyond the great risk of death. That's showing that the great risk existed because a high probability existed. But great risk occurs at low probabilities too. Just because something has a lower probability.
Maybe I should have just left that warning because my XP per hour really dipped with me dealing with that stuff.
you're stepping into great risk territory. In my opinion. It also makes no difference that the facts of other cases do not precisely fit the facts here. Defendant spills much ink. That's a good line, because that's true. They spent pages and pages on all these other cases that didn't really have anything to do with it. Detailing the facts of other cases where courts have analyzed the great risk of death aggravator. But the fact that other defendants did more to endanger others, like firing multiple shots, than defendant did here is not persuasive. The issue is not whether another court has applied the aggravator in a case with identical or at least highly similar facts. Rather, the issue is whether the evidence, together with the reasonable inferences therefrom, when properly viewed in the light most favorable to the state, supports a reasonable belief that defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to at least one other person. The ultimate test is the statutory test again.
Okay, I'll be right back, and it's a good time to test. Actually, no. 10 minutes till the end of the hunt, I'll hold it in. Not the end of the hunt, the end of my booster.
The language is open to interpretation. It's not open to a complete change, but they say, okay, well, what is a great risk of death and what is knowing? Those are the two things. The defense does not have a case. Well, I mentioned this while we were reading through all of them and going, on all of these, they found, these are bad sites because on all of these, they found the aggravating factor just about. I think there was one that they didn't do in a different state. But in pretty much all of them, they found the aggravating factor. And they listed off why they did. So the defense is trying to use that to say that there is a de facto standard and that it's higher than what happened here. The reason they did that is because that's all they could do. They don't have a case saying the standard is any different than what the statute says or how specifically to read it. They didn't find a case that says, here's what the great risk of death means. Because the great risk of death isn't that confusing. So the courts haven't needed it, I don't. It's pretty obvious when it happens. If you shoot at a crowd of people, there's a great risk of death of other people. That's it. And so the defense did their best. They have no case directly on point. They tried to establish a
Back to
standard based on what
prismatic
they
ring.
found. Now, I don't know if they left stuff out. Very possible. It doesn't really matter. they didn't do it right. They lose. This court must also recognize that while Sosa Hurtado analyzed and applied the great risk of death aggravator, it did so in a different context, and therefore had a different focus. Sosa Hurtado fired 3 shots at 2 different people. He fired the third and fatal shot at his victim at close range and with his back to the other smoke shop employee. The issue in that case therefore concerned the scope of the relevant circumstances that a jury could consider in determining whether the aggravator was satisfied. As the court explained, the issue is whether the relevant circumstances extend beyond the precise act that caused the death of the victim. Okay, so what they're saying is, this guy's in close proximity, but he's behind him. Can the jury consider the close proximity if it's, is he really at a great risk of death? If shooting this way and the person's that way, but they're close. I think we find that they said, yeah, the jury can consider it. So here we go. As the court explained, the issue was whether the relevant circumstances extend beyond the precise act, or whether the aggravator applied only where the murderous act itself creates a great risk of death to the third party. And so again, is the person at risk of being murdered because there's a guy murdering people? Is the question maybe for the jury. The court ultimately held that the relevant circumstances include more than just the murderous act itself. So again, shooting this way when there's someone close by behind you isn't the only factor. Is the person at risk of that guy turning around shooting them, a ricochet, well, hold on. The jury is allowed to consider it. Doesn't mean they'll find it. A person may be guilty of knowingly creating a great risk of death to another person if he did so within a brief span of time of the act causing the murder, and the acts together formed a concatenating series of events. Unlike Sosa Hurtado, this case involves only the murderous act itself. Right, so what the defense tried to do is say that the murderous act happens, and then a concatenating series of events has to happen in line with that murderous act that causes a great risk of death. Now, I talked about the concatenating series of events starting before the murder, right? Like the event of him getting into position, lining up his rifle, etc., which is one way to look at it. They're saying that doesn't really matter, because pulling the trigger in and of itself is fine. I was relying on the defense's characterization of things, talking about it in that context. But they're saying the defense is entirely wrong. And I tend to believe the prosecution. The evidence supports a reasonable belief that the statutory test for the aggravator is satisfied here. Although Sosa Hurtado was focused on the scope of the relevant circumstances that can support the aggravator, its analysis is nevertheless helpful here. This is a good line. The way they wrote this, they're saying this case actually doesn't speak directly to our case. They're different. It's examining a series of events. Ours is analyzing just the murder. But there is helpful stuff. They're saying that both of those things fit under the statute. The defense said the opposite. I think the defense is wrong. but we'll see. This is nevertheless helpful here because the Supreme Court recognized that firing a rifle at a murder victim while another is close by creates a great risk of death for the surviving person. We talked about this. As explained in the state's
Wow, I'm really drowning in these echo rates today. Not that I'm complaining, but
the first was a shot towards that surviving employee that missed. The other was a shot that hit the murder victim in the hand while the surviving employee was only a few feet away. Thus, contrary to defendant's contention, Utah has in fact adopted an interpretation of the aggravating factor that would permit its application for firing of a single shot at an intended victim, but only the intended victim. So there's two separate things. Like the shots are actually analyzed separately. Here, there were several people close to Mr. Kirk when the defendant shot dead. Most significantly, the questioner was directly between defendant and Mr. Kirk and within a few feet of Mr. Kirk. There were also several people who were near the questioner. There were also those with Mr. Kirk who were under or near his tent. All these people were visible in the clear line of sight between defendant's perch and Mr. Kirk's seat. Indeed, from a distance of 410 feet from Mr. Kirk, basic mathematics dictates that an angular shift of even 1/8 of an inch, they should have done that in radian, would result in a substantial miss of the intended target, either above, below, right, or left, depending on the direction of the shift, placing many others in danger. Given these facts, 2 of the 3 Sosa Hurtado factors support the conclusion that the great risk of death aggravator applies. This is interesting because they just said it's not a multi-factor test, but they're applying the test anyway and showing that it still supports it. As explained, the spatial relationship between those in the line of fire and are close to Mr. Kirk supports application of the aggravator. Defendant also threatened these people by indirect means through the risk of a stray or ricocheting bullets. The other Sosa Hurtado factor, the time between the murderous act and any other acts defendants may have taken towards third parties, is simply inapplicable here. So yeah, there's you can't ever pass that test or that factor because there's only one shot. He doesn't do anything towards any other defendant. Now, you could have jump kicked someone from the roof or whatever. There's theoretical possibilities other than shooting. Again, he could have gotten in a car and run over a kid or almost run over a kid or something. That would have been a series of acts, right? But they're saying it's now. And then that should tell you the fact that there's one part of the test that simply cannot be satisfied, even though other people are at great risk. That part of that's not part of it. The other thing that should have told him that is that it says it over and over and over. This is not a multi-factor. Okay, consideration of the Sosa Hurtado factors therefore supports a reasonable belief that defendant knowingly created a great risk of death those who are in defendant's line of fire and those who are close to Mr. Kirk but outside the line of fire when defendant pulled the trigger. Yes, this is obvious. Defendant's attack on the state's line of fire argument, which he repeatedly mislabels as a line of sight argument, on the basis that Mr. Kirk was seated in an elevated position. Defendant asserts that the bullet traveled above, not through, the crowd. But in State's Exhibit 8, the questioner's head is visible above Mr. Kirk's head. Ooh. Others standing in the front rows of the crowd are positioned at approximately the same level as the questioner, but slightly farther back from Mr. Kirk. And regardless of the precise elevation of the questioner's head and the heads of the others in the crowd in relation to Mr. Kirk's head, any difference is so negligible that it does not place the others outside the line of fire. The evidence therefore supports a reasonable belief that all these people were in the line of fire. Remember I said, well, maybe you don't, but I said in the defense one, it should have included a map, trigonometry, that shows where the bullets line had to go and shows where each person is to show they were at no risk. That would have been something to do. There's a reason they probably didn't, because it wouldn't have been helpful. That wouldn't be dispositive, by the way. The state would still overcome that, but they could have at least tried. The evidence therefore supports reasonable belief that all these people were in the line of fire and therefore within the zone of danger. The defendant created when he fired his rifle. By the way, the zone of danger is beyond the line of fire. It's necessarily bigger. That's why it's a zone and not a line. The zone of danger from a rifle is a cone to some degree in front of the rifle because it must be
centered on the line of sight.
Lateral movement. So it's a 3-dimensional cone that goes out. That's why it's a zone of danger. All right. The defendant created when he fired his rifle. Defendant knowingly created great risk of death for people who were in his line. Line of fire is just within the zone of danger. The zone of danger is bigger. That was the point I was trying to make. Defendant knowingly created a great risk of death for those near Mr. Kirk when the defendant pulled the trigger. 100%. Obviously, this is true. Defendant also knowingly created a great risk of death for those near Mr. Kirk, although not within the line of fire. 2 security personnel were directly in front of and on either side of Mr. Kirk, but still within the span of his tent. The 3rd security person was under the tent and just to Mr. Kirk's right. This person had to take only a small step to reach Mr. Kirk as he fell. I remember seeing it. Another person was operating a camera just under the tent's front edge to Mr. Kirk's left. Defendant had a clear line of sight to view all these people from just 410 feet away. I don't know why it says just. The evidence also supports a reasonable inference that defendants knew that people were in the area behind Mr. Kirk's tent. Defendant visited the amphitheater area at least twice before the shooting. This evidence supports a reasonable inference that he saw the staging area behind Mr. Kirk's tent. The fact that the defendant had a clear line of sight to Mr. Kirk's tent at the time of the shooting also supports a reasonable inference that the defendant knew people were at that staging area when he fired. The defendant argues that given the speed with which he had to acquire his target and fire once he got into position in the sniper's nest, that the evidence does not support a reasonable inference that he knew any of these people were present. But this argument again ignores the controlling evidentiary standard because it asks the court to view the inferences in defendant's favor rather than in the state's. Defendant had a clear line of sight to Mr. Kirk, the crowd, those nearest Mr. Kirk, and those in the staging area behind the tent. The evidence therefore supports a reasonable inference that defendant knew that all the above mentioned people were near Mr. Kirk when defendant fired his rifle. And defendant had longer than just approximately 35 to 44 seconds in the prone position to observe these people. He would also have seen these people as he ran and then crawled towards the rooftop position. Yes, of course. But the 35 to 44 seconds that he had is more than ample. Regardless, emphasizing how hastily defendant had to act to acquire his target and fire his rifle does not help. Correct. Especially because of the reasonable inferences going in favor of the state. They can reasonably infer that finding his target meant excluding other targets. That's a reasonable inference.
How would the defendant prove in court that he did not see people?
So, the speed at which the defendant had to act, coupled with evidence showing that he had to reassemble his rifle, and that he loaded 4 cartridges in his rifle. And by the way, the state's evidence establishing that he had to reassemble his rifle might be disproven at trial. It's not dispositive of the case. But here it's assumed because the state has presented evidence of it, and the inferences drawn from it go in favor of the state. The defense would have to show that that was impossible in some way. They didn't do that. They didn't even try because they couldn't. Whether or not he reassembled his rifle, I'm not convinced either way on that one. I also don't care. I know the rifle was up on the roof. We watched him run away with it. Let's see. It up. Sometimes misses target entirely. All supports the reasonable inference the defendant knew he commits. An inference supports a reasonable belief that he knowingly created great risk of death to both those in his line of fire and others near Mr. Kirk. Again, a jury can infer that an individual is knowingly endangering a person when the individual uses a gun in any area where he knows that others could be, citing Commonwealth v. Watson. And that's obvious. This is such a well-established part of criminal law that using a gun is deadly force. You can shoot someone, like you can put the gun up to a big toe and pull the trigger. It's still deadly force. Period. It just, like, firing a gun at someone is deadly force presumptive. This isn't a question. It's weird that, I guess it's not weird. The defense is trying what they have. But it's not like they were going to win there. Common sense also dictates that firing a gun, especially a high-powered rifle, towards others puts them at great risk of death. That is precisely why gun ranges prohibit shooters from even handling a firearm when others are downrange beyond the firing line.
True.
Defendant highlights cases where other courts did not find that the facts satisfied the great risk of death aggravated. But again, the issue is not how closely the facts here resemble those in other cases. The issue is whether the facts here, together with the reasonable inferences therefrom, demonstrate a reasonable belief that defendant satisfied the statutory aggravated. And none of these cases resemble this scenario here. Correct. None of them were equal. Moreover, some of these cases support application of the aggravating circumstance in this case. For example, although the defendant in Littlejohn v. Sting fired only one shot in a convenience store that hit his intended victim, the court recognized the aggravator applies when the defendant acts greater risk of death to another which are in close proximity in terms of time, location, and intent to the act of the killing itself. There is no mention in Littlejohn of how close others in the store were to the person who was shot and killed. Similarly, although the court in Johnson v. State found that the defendant did not create a great risk of death, I overlooked what they were talking about here. Close proximity is not necessarily literal physical proximity. It could also mean location. The location of inside a convenience store is close proximity. So it's not a ring of like a 3-foot radius or a 5-foot radius or 10-foot. It's not a bright line rule like that. Close proximity means close proximity. Sometimes convenience stores are really like small cramped areas. Even if you're 10, 15 feet away, the close proximity creates risks. Like necessarily, one, ricochets are a real problem, real potential problem. But there are other risks in there too. There's a risk of causing a heart attack, for example. We know that cause a heart attack while committing a felony, if your act is tied to that, you go felony murder in many states. Similarly, although the court in Johnson v. State found that the defendant did not create great risk of death to another when he fired at a store manager at point-blank range, the court also noted that no other person was within the immediate vicinity or within the line of fire, as is the case here. So they're just drawing distinguishing factors between ones that weren't favorable. Finally, the court statement in U.S. v. Bin Laden about a defendant who might carefully target his victim does not help the defendant here. That court posited that a jury may find there to be a qualitative difference between a defendant who carefully targets an intended victim or victims without endangering others and one who acts with indifference to additional persons. But defendant here acted with indifference to those in his line of fire and close to Mr. Kirk because his shot endangered them, even though it ended up hitting his intended target. So they're saying, of course, someone could demonstrate extreme precision and care, and he didn't. He didn't do that. Demonstrating extreme precision and care would probably be doing it while no one was around. Many of the defendant's arguments depend on ignoring some evidence and improperly viewing the evidentiary inferences in his favor. Defendant's argument that the evidence does not establish probable cause to satisfy the great risk of death aggravator are also unpersuasive because they ignore evidence and improperly view other evidence and reasonable inferences in the light most favorable to him. Defendant's argument that he did not have to reassemble his grandfather's rifle ignores the evidence that the rifle was in at least 2 pieces because he was both walking with a limp and carrying a backpack as he approached and climbed onto the roof. It also ignores the fact that the defendant left a screwdriver on the roof near the railing that he flopped over to access the sniper's perch. Defendant omits the screwdriver on the roof from his recitation of the facts. And even if defendant could have concealed the entire rifle in his pant leg, transporting it that way supports a reasonable inference. The scope would not be in the same position that it occupied when defendant sighted in the rifle, assuming that he did so before the shooting. They're pointing out, by the way, that the scope not being sighted in, which is often alluded to by the conspiracy side, like, oh, if you have a reasonable rifle, the scope isn't 0. Yeah! That's part of the problem. That supports the aggravator. If it's not zeroed in, then
There's
it's not
more risk
effective.
that it will kill people.
The scope is actually zeroed in. The targets found in defendant's apartment and the 4 engraved cartridges loaded in the rifle likewise support the reasonable inference that defendant knew he might miss. Defendant's argument that the targets might be completely unrelated to the murder is undermined by their continued presence in his apartment and the discovery of a cartridge in his apartment that he had engraved with the words "test shot." Dumb. And whether those targets are related to the murder or not, their presence in defendant's apartment supports a reasonable inference that they record his shots. And that's true. That's true. That may not hold up at trial. The jury may not accept that. But it does support a reasonable inference that it's his. It's in his apartment.
How long do my
The targets
booster
show that he
ends?
seldom
What the fuck?
bullseye, sometimes misses target altogether. Lance complained about the same thing. In some, because the evidence demonstrates probable cause for each element of count 1, aggravated murder, the court must find defendant over for trial on that count. Yeah, I agree. Obviously, I agree. We've been through this.
Maybe I'll just continue hunting until the mid-hunt break.
Yes, of course it's a risk of death. People get trampled all the time. Is it a great risk of death? At a probable cause hearing? Yeah, I would think so. At trial, I don't know. Saying someone is at great risk of death from trampling, lots of crowds disperse, especially in shootings. We don't hear a lot about trampling. Is it a risk? Yes. Does it rise to great risk? I don't know. I think that's one of those instances where you go, okay, maybe not. But that's a good question. Okay, contrary to defendant's assertion, this is about obstruction of justice. His direction to Mr. Twiggs to not talk to police does not unequivocally demonstrate that defendant meant only to help Mr. Twiggs, rather than obstruct an investigation. Defendant's argument otherwise improperly draws the inference in his favor. Right, you can take both inferences. Both can be reasonable. The court is required to accept the states here. Moreover, defendant ignores that his direction to Mr. Twiggs about the police came in the same conversation in which defendant also directed Mr. Twiggs to delete their incriminating text messages. And this bit of evidence, one on its own, the deleting of the text messages, but also that weighs in the state's favor also. In regards to the don't talk to the cops. The conversation also included defendant explaining how he concealed his rifle and changed his clothing. Right, and of course, that conversation is some of the most damning evidence that exists. Although defendant claims to contextualize his statement to Mr. Twiggs, he actually ignores the full context of his statement. Ignoring incriminating evidence does not make it go away. State versus McNeil. Properly viewed, the evidence supports a reasonable inference that defendant intended to obstruct an investigation when he instructed Mr. Twiggs not to talk to police. The evidence, therefore, requires binding defendant over on count 6.
The booster is over.
100%. Of course, all of this does. Here's the thing. You don't get to contextualize your statement. If you're contextualizing evidence in a preliminary hearing, you lose. There's no contextualizing it because the context can go either way. So if you say, no, here's the context. The state can ignore, the court is required to ignore your context. The only context you can provide would have to be to eliminate the possibility. To show the texts were forged, for example, if they had evidence saying pretty conclusively that the texts were made by someone else. Okay, that would do it. But other than that, you can try and change the context all you want, it doesn't fucking matter. Here we go, 1 second.
Logic and reasoning apply to a crazy ass act. Sounds like snobby people trying to make sense of shit that don't make no sense. Tyler wasn't using his gat in a shooting contest. He done went crazy, blam!
Harley, you bit me. John's dead.
Exactly. This is something that is, it's a temptation in these types of cases, and in every case, is to assign reasonable behavior to someone acting categorically unreasonable. Murdering Charlie Kirk is not reasonable, right? Assassinating someone is outside of the norm of human behavior. So why are we assuming, and again, this is when we're drawing inferences that must go in favor of the state. They must. That's the rule. How can we rely on the defendant being rational when we're drawing those inferences? Logically, we must assume the defendant is acting irrationally because he is. He's murdering someone. That's not normal. That's not normal at all. Okay, so here we go. Properly viewed, it supports a reasonable inference. The evidence, therefore, required finding over on count 6. So now, this is evidence supports a reasonable inference that he knew at least one child was present when he shot Mr. Kirk. And Brandy was not required to state. Okay, we're going to get through this quickly, and we're almost done. The evidence supports a reasonable inference that the defendant knew a child was present. Defendant's argument that there is no evidence from which this court can infer a reasonable belief that he knew a child was present focuses only on the short time the defendant was on the Pelosi building route. I also think that's not really the best argument because it's entirely reasonable to assume that a child was visible. Defendant ignores the evidence that he was in the amphitheater area at least twice on the morning of the shooting, including eating lunch at the Sorensen Center that borders the amphitheater. As explained, when all evidence is considered, it supports a reasonable inference that defendant saw the attendees that were gathering for the event, including the children who were present. But even if the evidence was limited to just the time the defendant was on the route, he could see the entire crowd from that vantage point. That evidence alone supports a reasonable inference.
But you can't notice a specific individual in the crowd. But you can infer that he could have, so it goes to the state as well.
There's two things going on. The violent offense committed in front of a child is a crime, but it's also an aggravating factor in other crimes. So there's a distinction. They're saying that in the other crime, where it's an aggravating factor, they don't have to prove it in this brief or in the pre-trial. But they do for the crime. The separate crime requires the proper cause. Okay, defendant also misrepresents the holding of Apprendi versus New Jersey in arguing that the state must establish probable cause at the preliminary hearing to support the violent offense of in a child's presence, aggravating factor for counts 1 and 2, and the victim targeting sentence enhancement for those same counts. Right. I want to point out, I did independent research on this, and I posted it on Twitter after I read the other document, and the prosecution's right. Like, they don't.
No.
There's actually nothing, as long as the aggravator is within the statute and does not increase the sentence beyond the statutory maximum, they don't have to prove it probable cause. Contrary to the defendant's representation, Apprendi did not hold that any fact which increases the potential punishment in a case are elements of the offense which must be proven to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. They're saying it did not hold, and they quoted it. Rather, Apprendi held that any fact that increases the penalty for a crime beyond the prescribed statutory maximum must be submitted to a jury and proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Correct. The jury has to approve the sentence on the aggravating factor. Sorry. Neither the violent offense in the child's presence aggravating factor nor the victim targeting enhancement implicating Apprendi does neither increase the penalty for counts 1 or 2 beyond the prescribed statutory maximum. The violent offense aggravator requires only that the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider as an aggravating factor in their deliberations that the defendant committed the violent criminal offense in the presence of a child. It does not increase the statutorily imposed maximum penalty for aggravated murder beyond death, or the penalty for felony discharge of a firearm beyond 5 years to life.
What is beyond the death penalty?
So,
Multiple death penalties?
Sentencing, aggravating factors in sentencing are typically discretionary, or maybe for the fact finder. I don't know if you taught juries do the sentencing or if the judges, but I'm kidding that it's the judge. Sentencing judge, yeah. So, they are allowed to consider a whole swath of things. But if they're basing their decision on an if they're making the decision on an aggravating factor that increases the statutory maximum, then it has to go to a jury. Otherwise, they get to just factor it in themselves. Well, the facts have to go for you know. So too for the victim targeting enhancement. Because counts 1 and 2 charge a capital and first-degree felony respectively, the victim targeting enhancement does not increase the level of those offenses or the statutory maximum punishment for those crimes. Rather, like the violent offense aggravator, the victim targeting enhancement requires only that the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider the defendant's selection of the victim or property as an aggravating factor. So that's just for them to make the decision within the guidelines. Because neither the aggravating factor nor the sentencing enhancement implicate Apprendi, the state is not required to prove their elements at this preliminary hearing. Yeah, I agree. Rather, as explained in the state's opening memorandum, the state is required to prove the victim targeting enhancement only for count 7, committing a violent offense in the child's presence, because the enhancement raises that crime from a Class B to a Class A misdemeanor and therefore increases the statutory maximum penalty. Great. The evidence supports a reasonable inference that the defendant targeting Mr. Kirk because of his perception of Mr. Kirk's political expression. So now, they don't have to prove it out here, but they're going to say they did anyway, right? As with several other of his arguments, defendant again ignores critical evidence and asserting that the state has not established probable cause to support victim targeting enhancement as count 7. Most importantly, defendant ignores he engraved one of the cartridges in his grandfather's rifle with the overt political reference, "Hey, fascist, catch." That alone is sufficient to establish a reasonable belief that defendant targeted Mr. Kirk because of his perception of Mr. Kirk's political expression. Again, ignoring incriminating evidence does not make it go away. Defendant also ignores the evidence that as TPUSA's leader, Mr. Kirk's avowed purposes included promoting and debating political issues, and that his events on college campuses were intended to further political ends. As explained, Mr. Kirk's goals included helping people develop the knowledge, skills, values, motivations that
He knew who Charlie Kirk was and what he was doing. That's why he killed him. Come on now.
Charlie Kirk is obviously political unless you somehow show that it's not. Like that it was random. He was just going to shoot somebody.
Not random. Charlie Kirk raped his girlfriend or something. Charlie Kirk... Oh, sorry, not his girlfriend, his boyfriend. So his boyfriend was in love with Charlie Kirk and was jealous.
Discuss principles and doctrines, and to persuade attendees to follow mindset rooted in politically conservative values. All this evidence, along with that discussed in the state's opening memorandum, establishes a strong inference that defendant targeted Mr. Kirk because of defendant's perception of Mr. Kirk's political expression. This is typically true when this evidence is considered in light, especially true when this evidence is considered in light of defendant's admission that he killed Mr. Kirk because defendant had enough of Mr. Kirk's hatred. The evidence therefore establishes probable cause for count 7 as an enhanced Class A misdemeanor, and even if Apprendi applied to the victim targeting enhancement as counts 1 and 2, which it does not, the evidence establishes probable cause anyway. So yeah, they just fully rounded out. They fully rounded out their argument. Very well done. Their conclusion is really short because there's nothing left to be said. For these reasons, and those in the state's opening memorandum, the court should find defendant over for trial. All counts charged in the information. There you go, Jeffrey Wren. With that, I'm going to run to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
Slider can't handle the liquor inside. We might as well let you from top stairs. I'll be a strange, just so you know. Drinking along is what most of us do. Getting united, getting excited. What you have fun is keeping it through. God is from both front and back. Crowd fights, lady good. Remember to thank us for all of that.
Sometimes I am back. I am back. Whew. Sometimes. Man, sometimes I need to go to the bathroom really bad. You know how it goes.
Lucky it's not me right now.
Alright. Let's summarize that filing. Filing's a sledgehammer to the defense. They call out the defense very specifically on misrepresentations that the defense made. Going so far as to suggest that they were a violation of the defense ethical obligations. That's a powerful statement. Like that's a lot. The defense
The judge ain't gonna do shit about that though.
misrepresented the case law that they were relying on or their misrepresentation. They did both. It's not a mistake. They omitted a critical language from the case that they spent the most time talking about, I believe, which was Sosa Hurtado, which pervades pages and pages of their brief. They lied about their biggest argument. That's not good. That's not a good way to do this. If you do that, and the other side calls you out, well, one, you look foolish. But you don't just look foolish, you look intentionally dishonest as well. That's part of being the fool, is being intentionally dishonest. The court is going to find that out. The other side's going to call you out. So either they did shoddy work or they lied. Just bad both ways. Chichunia.
Yeah, but one of them gets you sanctioned, the other one doesn't.
Sorry I've already covered this, but Charlie Kirk Security wanted to lock down that roof and put up a drone, and the campus refused and said it would be, I'm guessing you're saying excessive or unnecessary, or it would be locked down or something like that. Seems to have been cut off. Wanting to lock down the security, the roof. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. I mentioned that the roof should have been locked down. Access to it should have been stopped by the school. Charlie's security team shouldn't have had to worry about that. But maybe they should have checked. Who knows? But if they said to the school, hey, we want this locked down, the school said, yeah, we got it, and they didn't do it, then I guess Erica has a wrongful death claim against the school.
But they're not gonna do anything about it.
But I want to not get bogged down too much in this. Now, like bullet going. I want to not get bogged down too much in this because of some critical considerations. Yeah, they might have stopped Tyler getting on the roof. There's nothing to say that Tyler doesn't go somewhere else to make the shot.
Well, he did plan it in advance.
Nothing to say that. So, while they may have eliminated what happened, the nature of this type of event is necessarily unpredictable.
Okay, last lap, I think.
You can't lock down everything. You can't cover every contingency. There's not enough money. There's not enough money and not enough people. That's just a limiting factor of all of this. And the overwhelming majority of the time, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen because there's a bunch of dudes walking around with firearms and they're big and scary, whatever it is. You know there's security. You don't want to go to prison. You don't want to end up in an arm bar or shot. So most of the time, the presence of security is a sufficient deterrent. A lot of other times, there's some tip. There's some indication. Someone was in, like in this case, it didn't happen this way, but you can imagine that Tyler might have fantasized about killing Charlie Kirk in the Discord. Doesn't seem to have happened, so please don't take that as an assertion. But he might have fantasized about it, and one of the Discord people might have contacted some law enforcement agency, FBI, whatever, and say, hey, like, this guy, he's saying some weird shit about murdering someone. That happens with more frequency than people think, I think. Someone says they're going to do something wrong, and then someone else like, well, I don't know if I want to. They get nervous because they're a part of it, even if they don't want to be, right? Like, they're in that Discord server and someone says something. If they don't report it, people feel culpable. They feel responsible. They might be criminally responsible, depending on the circumstances. So they go to the authorities with regularity. When people talk in even semi-private rooms with groups of people, you get beyond one or two really trusted people. You get outside of that, Those circles get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. People don't know you quite as well. Maybe not as crazy, don't hold the exact same political beliefs. Suddenly, like, your crazy stuff sounds crazy to someone. They might have agreed with you on tax issues, but kidnapping the governor or whatever, it's a joke. We know that was a fed up because it like literally was. But
Literally was ruled to be.
when things start to get real, people do get afraid. They do have a conscience. Most people aren't murderers, and they don't want to be in any way participating in that. So maybe you keep a private chat with a couple people, and you're free to say literally anything. Those are your ride or die homies, right? And they might have to ride or die, depending on how insane you are. But outside of that, it's very frequently reported. We have no indication of that. In fact, we have some evidence to support the idea that Tyler Robinson was exceptionally quiet about this.
He did tell his boyfriend.
Evidence. He
Probably.
was exceptionally quiet because Lance said so. And again, people who misunderstand evidence, people who misunderstand facts, and who don't understand inferences, go, well, Tyler Robinson never talked about killing Charlie Kirk. Didn't really talk about politics much at all. Therefore, he didn't do it juicy. I'm sorry. Whether someone speaks publicly about their planned murder,
You can't infer that it's not that they're not guilty. You could just infer that they're careful.
it's for a week, he said, about a week. Like, that's pretty quick. That's pretty quick for a murder.
No,
But it's also
no.
pretty long. A lot of murders happen real quick, like within a few minutes. There's not a lot of
How long does it take to plan? Plan takes like an hour. Execution and preparation takes like a day or two.
Planned it for a week, which is both long and short. But when Lance Twigg says, yeah, Tyler, we never really discussed politics. One, that's a little bit self-serving. He's trying to protect himself from culpability. Like, I have no idea. But he has use immunity, so I don't think that would be a problem for him. However, I don't know his exact immunity agreement, right? Like, we don't know the full scope of it, so I don't think it's available publicly. But so maybe that would be a problem. But either way, the most likely outcome is that Tyler didn't really talk much politics, and he didn't talk about shooting Charlie Kirk. Okay. What inference do we draw from that, though? That security would have had no way to know that this fucking dork was going to shoot him. Normally, a crazy motherfucker has a manifesto. I say normally. Often, a crazy motherfucker has a manifesto as someone that they've told. And that it gets out there in some way. When these people are stopped, when lunatics are stopped doing their bad act, it's because the information did get out. They couldn't keep it quiet. But all the time, people don't say they're going to kill someone, and then they go kill them. It's weird how that works, but that happens often. And people have no idea. People may not have known that a person holds like serious political beliefs that drive them to murder. Because it's outside of the way we normally think. Like, you're not, when you see someone at the grocery store, you're not like, I bet that guy is a First Amendment auditor. You're not thinking that. You're just like, it's a guy at the grocery store. Unless he's yelling at someone, and it's a First Amendment auditor. But this actually just goes to support the notion that the security team would have no way of knowing that someone was going to climb up on the roof and shoot Charlie Kirk. Right? You see people arguing whichever way you want, and that's fine. Like,
Well, Charlie did warn them that that they should be protecting him because people are after his life, probably.
Them knowing what it should be in the time that it happened, that's less true. Now, if they wanted to lock down the building, they didn't get locked down, maybe they should have fucking checked, right? But again, practicality gives way at some point to the whole purpose of security, which is overwhelmingly just theater. The visible presence of security is the security. That's what's stopping.
It's most of it.
Once we understand that, we realize that Charlie's security team failed. But their failure isn't like particularly strange. In fact, I would argue that most security teams probably fail when there's an actual attempt at an assassination.
Duh.
But it doesn't happen very often. They can. Yeah, it's their job to think of the unthinkable. Yes. many security people do you know? This is kind of a weird statement. I think it's a bit of a paradox. And I'm not picking on you here. I think you're very nice. So I don't want to come across in any negative way, but we say it's your job to think of the unthinkable. But security is all about calculated risk reduction. So it's literally the thinkable. That's what their job actually is.
It makes no sense to think the unthinkable, because unthinkable by definition means you can't think it.
Most common thinkable things. Which is why Val was saying, like, security happens in rings. Like, you have different zones of caution and danger, and you have, it's not necessarily linear. It's not a linearly decreasing risk, like, because guns are a force and range multiplier. So, for example, the farther away you get, the less physical danger someone's in from, like, a punch. But when you get to a certain distance, they become really, really at risk of, like, a rifle. At some distance, they're most highly at risk of a handgun. The person's not going to get as close as they could. But it's easy to say stuff like it's their job to think of the unthinkable. If your job is to think of something that can't be thought, you will fail it. And I would posit you're right, and that security often fails to think of the unthinkable. I think that's pretty obvious. We have had several lessons throughout history. But I also think that's not their only job. Their other job is to apply the thinkable as best they can and execute. People can assess the security job that they did here. Erica Kirk praised
I'll
the
be right
security
back.
team that bothers people. So for Gabe, Tyler, stuff like that. You know, that's
Go. Now I need to also check real quick if the stream was doing okay.
Likewise, improperly draw inferences in defeat from Mr. Kirk. Basic mathematics dictates that an angular shift of even 1/8 of an inch, they should have done that in radian, would result in a substantial miss of the intended target.
The game is a bit jittery on my stream. Maybe not. I don't know. Okay, let's get going. I have an hour and 40 minutes left, so I better hurry up. When is double XP? In a week. Okay. Oh, there's a Gamescom.
Yeah, I think this is
Gamescom.
Fatal.
Showcase now, or there was a few hours ago.
But like, I'm not really entirely sure. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And what is this here? Gonna make some like slot it. Put that one in there. I mean, like we could. Persona 6. Gentlemen, I think we have ourselves a lot of fun. What do you guys think about this? Dude, Armored Core 6 DLC, it's dead, okay? It's not gonna happen. I think they're gonna make Armored Core 7, I do, because of how well Armored Core 6 did, but I don't think that you're really gonna get DLC for
Nothing.
the I don't think it's gonna happen. As much as I want to see it, I just don't think so. It's a Gooner game. I already have Gacha Game on. I already do. So we don't need to add that because that's kind of already assumed, isn't it? School 6, there's no way. Like Xbox is going to try to consolidate all of their announcements around their own event, right? And so, like, I think that's the main focus they're going to have. What is this? What is this gay shit? And none of this counts, by the way, because this is all the pre-show. Selected to build the next great theme. Oh, this is so stupid. Nobody cares. Okay, so yeah, I'll talk about this a little more, then I'll just like watch the show, right? But anyway, Light No Fire. Yeah, I don't know whatever happened with that. That was very odd, wasn't it? They already said they'll show Showbringer and Anata, and Anata's not Gacha. Yeah, Anata is not a Gacha game. It's not. They were going to make it a Gacha game originally, but they're redoing it. Like, it's kind of crazy that we've now had this happen twice already with Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, and then after that with recently Dragon Sword Awakening. a gacha game that's then remade into like just a premium game, which is like it's really annoying to me because like if you actually play a game like for example Wuthering Waves or like fucking Honkai Star Rail or like I'm trying to think of one more like even Zenless Sub-Zero, like they're very fundamentally like good games in a lot of ways, like Neverness. Like they're very good games, but they're just handicapped by a monetization structure that is so player unfriendly that this is this special animal game, right? This is Paw Print Studio. Ooh.
So Pal World imitation now?
Wait, didn't they steal that from Pal World? Wait, isn't that dog from Pal World? Gods.
So it's a derivative of a derivative. Nice.
Sure.
Yeah, this is wow. This is a shameless ripoff of Pal World.
Squares.
Oh, that okay. Never mind. And I thought it was derivative.
I guess that's like
Jet Dragon was a Gundam too in Pal World.
They have a PAL system like how Grand Fantasy Relay or Dragon's Dogma 2, the Fawn system, or Endwalker. No, Infield. Arknight's Infield Wars. Amoebon. How do you see the imprint of her ass before she's water and you can that's crazy. Wait, is this just gonna show gameplay? Wait, I want to see this. No, it's not. It's Chinese. Okay. So this looks like Beast of Reincarnation.
I need to really pay attention to my helmet imbue. It's gonna run out and I'm gonna forget to renew it, I know it.
Oh, that's really cool. Reminds me of in fucking God of War. Like a super high fantasy, like Chinese God of War.
The fight is even killed.
The voice acting is lacking. Yeah, that's cool. Hi Ninja.
Promise. There was no Bubsy in the pre-show this year, and yet there he was. How's this keep happening? Well, let's
Bubsy?
continue counting down to opening night live with more wall-to-wall trailers. So far,
Shut up,
we've seen
bitch! Get off the
high-speed-
screen!
We've seen high-speed trains.
Shut the fuck
We've
up!
seen Animo. So
Oh my god, game studios literally think video game content creators are celebrities.
It's like my room. We had a lamp like that, but it was yellow because my mom smoked cigarettes in the house. What fact? Yellow. Bro, like they made me hate them. Bro, like just retire. Spring 2027, starring Lindsay Clancy.
I love brave old lady.
Well, that trend's
Unutilized character arc. Nice to see Perceptum carry that mantle. I'm just saying there's some grandmas who won't put up with ghosts. So it's empowering to be that kind of person. Anyway, if you've been wondering what the team behind Tinykin has been up to, you're about to immediately find out.
Oh, this looks gay. What is this? Oh no, that's not another eating game, is it? Upside down. I don't. I think this is relatively interesting. What do you guys think?
Looks like a retarded Binding of Isaac ripoff.
It's e-girl slop? Yeah, anything that involves cooking with no combat is for girls.
And if there's cooking with combat, then it's not for girls.
Made him a pit bull. That would have been racist. Acornia, Mirror Worlds. That one seems a. Oh.
Says he brings enlightenment to the places he conquers.
Napoleon would recognize and remember the faces of his warriors all the time. Say their name before fights to increase morale. Historians and other people said that having Napoleon on the field fighting with his men was like having the added force of 20,000 men. A man who saves his country breaks no law. I don't think they have those in France, though.
Man.
Oh, that's that. Okay. Sphinx. That looks really, really, really cool. I'm obviously going to play this, but I'm not sure if it's going to be as good as people think it is. I'm just not. I'm not sure. Wait, it's a game that you drive around and you kill things that are driving around. Okay.
I looked it up because I was curious. All of that was from a poem called The Tiger by William Blake, published back in 1794.
Who cares?
But back then it was just a bunch of silent trailers for hopscotch and knuckle-bones. Now, another brand new game announcement.
Delightful stories have sparked inspiration.
William Blake's art was much better.
But the interpretations always fell short. Thankfully, I found
Give a fuck about the poem.
saved them.
Oh, I don't want to. It's a 80s like.
Be courageous and cunning.
It's a video game.
You'll be introduced to fun.
I can say what you're talking about. Quality of pro.
You just want tickets to my show! Wolves
You'll need to become resourceful.
Oh yeah, my helmet. Ah, fuck my life. No wonder my mana is dropping. Okay, so we do this and this. Let's go.
Games played with the exact same next.
The only hint that I had that my helmet ran out, even though I tried not to forget it or I told myself I won't forget it, is that I started my mana started dropping.
Gamescom Opening Night Live pre-show, where I realized there's been a lot of debuts already to keep track of. You might be looking for some help, just to remember all these titles to add to your wish list later. Well, I can't help you. I'm sorry, you're on your own. All I have is more world premieres.
What the hell? It's a lady looking in with the coat hanger. You never need to begin again. Okay. This is not this one. Yeah. So stupid.
Big horse.
That's so.
Shut up. Before Opening Night Live is just minutes away, but we're about to see a trailer for another new game that nobody knows about yet.
Yeah.
You can't Google it right now, but you can Google it 2 minutes from now. That's the magic of what we're doing here.
Uh-huh. Wait, I saw this game.
It looks like Warframe. A little bit.
This is a. Okay. This is cool. It's definitely cool. See, I tried to do that with a raccoon. It didn't work. This is good. I'll play this. I don't think anything about this is unique, different, like special or anything, but like it
Nope,
seems
but it looks not gay.
Flying Dragon friend who isn't wisecracking. That was refreshing. And now we're going to take a first ever look at a game for two-player co-op enthusiasts.
Two-player co-op.
Grandpa, what was Mom like? You never talk about her much.
She was complicated.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Actually, I'm not gonna disrespect two-player co-op because I've played some with my nephews, and it was not bad.
Ages yet?
I suppose we should learn how it works.
Though this does sound a bit retarded.
Of course, they treasure one from Mom.
Some kind of elder from where your mom was concerned, nothing was ever easy.
Is there any chance Mom can still be out there somewhere?
This isn't so bad.
You can't just ignore this, Grandpa. She was my mom.
I mean, this is decent. It's decent. Like at the beginning, it was kind of silly. I was like, this is all right.
I can hear the dialogue, and I know that the writing is written by millennial white women, so no thank you.
Something like that. Big day for my third. Okay. Play every single one of these games. What a snake bitch. Oh. Nope. Damn. For this time too. Like every Capcom game recently has been really good. And this is a new game, not a remake. New game. The past 8 years, yeah, I played every single one of these games. I'm not even kidding. I probably missed like 5 of these games in like the last 15 years. Like, I played pretty much every single one. Fucking sick. Yeah, it looks awesome. I wasn't gonna play the demo. I was gonna save myself for the actual release.
Yeah, Onimusha just shadow dropped an expansion to its demo in the middle of this pre-show. Now, I don't blame you if you're about to boot that up, but while it's downloading, we're about to hit my favorite part of the show. We're about to check out a brand new trailer for the beautiful Mariachi Legends, and then immediately after that,
What?
with the game's creative director. So first,
Mariachi Legends? Is that like a Guitar Hero for Mariachi? Oh. Side scroller.
Alright, cool. Yeah, I would play that. I like games like this. I do. I play a lot of Metroidvania games whenever I have time.
and now it's part of the show where we are blessed
What
with
happened?
a guest joining us now, the creative director and composer of Mariachi
It's in a different
Legends,
house.
Miguel Hassan.
It's really nice to be here. Thank you for asking. What's up, Miguel?
What is Mariachi Legends, and where did this concept come from?
It comes from the fact that he's Mexican.
Already, we start thinking about that Mexican vampire sort of idea. Mexican vampire? With African culture and Mexican culture. Cool. One thing led to another. That's Mariachi Legends.
Can you tell us one particular element of Mexican culture that you were excited to put into Mariachi Legends that you...
Mariachi bands?
Magical Town or Pueblo Mágico. This would be the first time a Pueblo Mágico was ever present in a video game ever. Very Mexican. I can see that.
How does this actually...
It's very Mexican. Okay, good. So the game is very Mexican. That's its selling point.
There's also the element of hunting for ingredients and being able to cook Mexican traditional dishes. So that allows you to enter some boss fights ridiculously overpowered.
So when can people finally...
That seems actually pretty good. Finally ready to announce that the game is coming next year. Yeah, this looks decent, guys.
for coming to talk with all of us.
What do y'all think?
Now, I've got good news and bad news. Bad news is we're all out of trailers
Thank
for
God.
this pre-show, which means that the good news is that it's time for the top 10 reasons to be excited for Gamescom Opening Night Live 2026.
Alright, what are they?
Number 10, Gears of War E-Day.
Oh.
The E stands for Emergence.
but might as well stand for excited for Gamescom. Number
It
9
stands
is
for
excited
actually
for
layoffs.
Gamescom opening night live 2026. Netflix couldn't lock down the exclusivity. Number 8, Ananta.
Oh.
That's like Vice City, but
Oh,
also
wow.
anime, and also you have Spider-Man powers. It's never boring. Number 7, so far the increasing price of RAM has not impacted the cost of watching trailers.
Okay.
Number 6,
Next.
we hit the word nooblet somewhere in Jeff Keighley's script and he hasn't found it yet.
Okay.
Number 5, a live performance of Guillotina from Eugenics.
I'm for that game.
It's gonna be bonkers. Number 4, The Witcher 3. Songs of
I turned off the music in Eugenics because it really started pissing me off really quickly.
Fantasy 7 Revelation. You know, I noticed they haven't shown a single set. Number 2, we helplessly trundle towards an all-digital future. Manufactured editions such as these have somehow become a rare remaining live space to share mutual enthusiasm for games. Now it's not really a joke. Sometimes I just get sad about stuff. And the number 1 reason to be excited for Gamescom opening night live is
Free content.
the pre-show is over. Oh, okay. No more waiting. No more anticipating. From this point forward, we'll be live in Cologne.
Okay.
Thanks for watching and enjoy the show.
Alright. The pre-show, I would rate this like, I think get rid of
3 out of 10.
just maybe 1 if you know it's gonna hit. Other than that, no quips. Who is it? Yeah. Yes. Do it. Here he is.
Welcome
Morning,
to
Frank.
Gamescom!
Are you guys ready for 2 hours of video game news and updates? Yeah. Right place. This is Gamescom opening night live in Cologne, Germany at Colmesse, and the crowd this year, you guys are honestly the loudest I've ever heard you. The energy and hype is on another level. You guys
Bullshit.
5,000 fans and the biggest consumer video game event in the world. This week, more than 350,000 people are expected here at Gamescom, and 10 millions or more will watch live online around the world. That's like me. I'm that guy. Well, you'll see if you love me by the end of the show. But yes, hopefully you will love me. When we started opening night live in 2019, we didn't know what to expect. From the very beginning, you guys welcomed us. Year after year, this community has made us feel home here. But they announced Legion of Gamescom, I'm pretty sure. On our game. I'm excited, yeah.
How much would a second booster give me if I make on average 13 KK raw? Let's say on average 12.5 KK raw. 75% of that is 9. We can round it up to 9.5 or 10. Let's say 9.5. KK. Nah, I'll save my money.
By the way, by far. He plays video games now. Tonight, I carry my dad's memory with me onto this stage. I am so grateful for all of you who welcome me to be back. I'll turn it up for the trailers. It is no secret that the video game industry is changing. On one level, that's exciting, but on another, it's kind of scary. It feels like there isn't a week we don't see headlines about layoffs or studio closures. On top of that, the larger electronic storage and memory crisis means that acquiring game hardware is more expensive.
Why couldn't they heal there? That was a bit scary.
Big teams, small indie teams, and teams all around the world. Tonight, you're going to see projects on stage from teams in places like France, Sweden, the UK, Italy, Canada, China, Japan, Korea, and more. So what can you expect on these screens behind me? I was really hoping for brand new information.
I want Expedition 44.
Metro 2039 from 4A Brain, 4A Games, Ukraine. Rayman Legends Retold, the Xbox console exclusive Gears of War E-Day. Tides of Annihilation, the first ever in-game footage of Warlock Dungeons and Dragons from Wizards of the Coast. And yes,
Fuck Wizards of the Coast.
brand new expansion, the 2015 Game of the Year winner, The Witcher 3. Oh yeah, it's called Song of the Night. They made them. And they also have a fun for you as well, including the first ever musical performance of the.
It's kind of wild that they're releasing the Witcher 3 DLC over a decade after it came out. Over a decade after it came out.
Of something completely different because anyone had time.
Damn, it looks really good. But this is just a cinematic.
Wait, what? Yo,
What the fuck is this?
these are the people that made Genshin Impact.
Held in some chaos. It traps you.
The graphics look insanely good. Jesus. What is this game?
These guys made Genshin Impact.
Well, yeah, they got shit tons of money. Notice fall. Now it looks like a actual computer game. Yeah, Genshin Impact made them so much shit tons of money that they're able to actually have a budget to develop whatever the fuck they want now.
Oh my god. Defeat mighty mythic teams using close coordination and sharp tactics. Looks very, very cool. And we're happy to kick off the
Looks
show.
really cool.
Very happy to welcome back a legend in the esports world, known for her work on League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and
the winner of Best Esports Host at the Game Awards.
Is that
Right,
Gotcha
so
Bingo?
she's our co-host for O and L.
They cooked hard, like, what
Third
the
year in a
fuck?
row, and you know what? We couldn't imagine
What the
doing
fuck?
it
That
without
was awesome.
Gamescom.
Oh my
please
God.
join me in giving a huge welcome to Shots.
Wow, thank you so much, Jeff. It is such an honor to be back here at.
Why does Gamescom have female hosts in the first place when women don't really play computer games?
Store tonight, and right now, I am very happy to share with you the global announcement of a brand new title in a very well-known franchise developed by Ubisoft Paris. This is Rainbow Six Tactics.
Oh no.
Oh, 6. Played Rainbow Six. Never played a single Rainbow Six game ever in my life.
This looks so new. This looks like a mobile game.
6. Yo, so like that game before was the Rainbow Six.
Oh my god, this is ugly as fuck.
Seen that before, and they must be planning something bigger. Send me everything you dig up on the agency bombings. There's no time to waste. We've contacted Rainbow's former operators. You just have to choose which ones.
I've never played a game like this. I don't think it's really my kind of thing.
Active hostiles all around, team. Move fast.
Great, shoot 'em.
I'm seeing activity across all channels. Want more fires?
I've never played a game like this. So I don't know if I would do it.
Is this an isometric? You hate turn-based. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but one of the best games of all time, Expedition 33, was turn-based.
Rainbow Six universe. Now in Tactics, you'll lead a squad of operators on
So that's what they're making over in Europe, though, right? Like that cartoon thing.
planning coordinated breaches.
So is Baldur's Gate 3, literally the best game of all time.
Every time you deploy Rainbow Six Tactics on
Baldur's Gate 3 as well.
Yeah, I know.
And XCOM. Some of the best games in the world are turn-based, to be fair.
Americans Day, the day that changed everything.
Yeah.
Here at Opening Night Live, we have the world premiere of the campaign trailer for Gears of War E-Day, including the first look at the Locust leader behind the invasion. From the Coalition, here's Gears of War E-Day, an Xbox console exclusive, launching this October.
I'm actually so excited for this. I am. Like, I played the first Gears of War. I love the campaign, the first Gears of War, and the second one.
Made it through the night. Follow along with me now. Destination Bravo.
There is.
Zombie game? Zombie shooter? Video game voice acting lost all its aura in the past decade or two. It looks woke, yes.
Alright, next is time for an epic free-to-play open world RPG
Banana.
from Denny's coming to PlayStation 5, PC, and mobile platforms. 3 years ago, it was revealed here at Gamescom with 2 massive cities. You build your profile and social following as a member of the ACT team. Tonight, we've got your first look at the city of Zhangzhou and the types of combat vehicles and minigames you can expect. And yes, news on the release date as well.
Alright, let's see it. This game looked really good when it first got announced. It was going to be a gotcha, but they changed it.
Oh no, just what I was talking about. Voice acting being fucking atrocious. This is really gay.
Fix the dialogue.
Fix the dialogue, I agree.
It looks cool. Like,
It doesn't. Almost really cool, okay. Looks like garbage.
beginning. What? Wait. What?
Many fantasy novels.
God damn. They have that building and where Lynn's beach. It was annoying. It's like
It's an anime Grand Theft Auto with voice acting that sounds like a bunch of low IQ single moms bantering.
yeah, damn. What the fuck, man? It's not gonna be free to play. That's insane.
2027.
Holy
Now we
shit.
have so much more Gamescom opening night live coming your way. Final Fantasy VII Revelation, but yeah, I know you're waiting for it. But for now,
Then
here
what?
is the
Then
new
I have to scan the shit
Silent
or
Hill
something.
Townfall.
What's that about?
I will actually pull all these mobs out because these fuckers are gonna steal all my loot if I give them the chance.
Don't be gay. You've seen this. It's a video game that's announcing the actors. It's not made by Kojima.
Can we stop pretending Kojima's a good story writer? Why does a fantasy video game trailer has Depeche Mode as its soundtrack with a woman singing it slowly?
Play this in 2 days now? Shit! No, we're gonna play it. We're gonna play it. Even though it's a girl, we're gonna still play it. Bullshit game? Yeah, it's not bullshit game. It's turn-based. It's turn-based. It's like 6 months ago, maybe we're gonna play the game. I'll find out. It's annoying. What's annoying to me about this game is that, like, it works amazing, but I don't like that. I want to be swinging and swanging, all right? Burn down. Like, that's so cool. That's fucking Armored War of boats. Turn-based combo. This is so
No, it's not Crimson Desert. No way. It just came out. What?
Stalker 2 as it should have been. It should have been Dragon Stalker 2.
How are we getting more Crimson Desert? It literally just came out like what, a year ago? Less than a year ago? Holy shit.
This is pretty good. Pretty fun.
I can play more Crimson Desert, sure.
By the way, that Crimson Desert is my game of the year.
Easily, yes.
Crimson Desert released nearly 6 months ago, and the developers at Pearl Abyss
6 months ago.
Crimson Desert.
Good for them. I mean, that game is a fucking real massive hit, and it's underrated as fuck.
Set in modern-day London and mythical Avalon, you play Gwendolyn, the lone otherworldly invasion, who can summon spectral form of the Knight of the Round Table.
Oh my god, that sounds so good.
Praise Astaroth, Resident Evil Requiem.
I'll play that one.
How are the graphics so bad? Why do we have a King Arthur's Legend game with a girl as the main character?
I think this is going to be Final Fantasy 16. Like, very similar to that.
No, it doesn't.
Make sure to check out the Geek.com Steve page, and if you're anything like me, I'm sure you have tons on your wish list and your cart, a few more candidates, right?
Well, I'm playing.
These will now be updated throughout the show as the titles are announced.
Reskin game?
And now to
They
introduce
reskin
our
them.
next
They're
trailer
overrated.
from
Yeah.
Smith Italy, founder and creative director of Unrelated Games, Alessandro Durato.
Alessandro. Wait, this slide?
Ciao GameStop. There is a question at the heart of love.
What? Can't understand what he's saying.
Wow, that's great. Being here, how about that? More than I can put into words. Lockdown.
So what's the game?
On a journey to the forgotten echoes of past humanity, where sound is the only language left. We'll uncover traces of memory, left in stone and sound, building a bridge between what was and what may still come. Here is Lockdown.
So far, so bad.
Like minimalist art games.
Whenever a developer or even just a marketer says something like, "Oh," starts talking with like this bullshit language of, "Oh, we'll give you an opportunity to explore the difference between what was and how things are now." It's like, bitch, it looks like the most simplistic bullshit ever. What are you talking about? How does anything of that relate to what I'm seeing in the trailer?
If that's the end of the showcase of this game, what a beautiful and artistic game made right here. Thank you, Alessandro. Right. One of my favorite moments from Black. That's the kind of game that looks like it got funded by the taxpayer. Return with Mega Man Dual Override from Capcom. Tonight, we've got an exclusive glimpse of it. Just has that vibe. Along the introduction of a new character.
Like Dustborn.
The foil Mega Man plan to save the world. Mega Man. Take a look. Let me see this. His main hero. I don't even want to talk about what the game development meant. I really don't. I don't want to even.
I haven't played Mega Man in like 20 plus years. It's this Mega Man looks nice, but it's way too modern. I mean, this is one of the OG side scrollers, so yeah. But making them because people like graphics too much and they don't like good games.
Oh, you hit the killer. Oh, okay, it's fine.
Yeah, this doesn't look good.
Tried this game. I probably played this. I mean, any of these games, like, yeah, sure. Wait, what? Alright, now let's talk about another legendary gaming hero, one without limbs. Rayman, celebrating his 30th anniversary.
He has limbs.
All built on the charm of the original 2013 game, now brought to life with stunning 3D visuals, new story content, and an all-new sixth realm to explore, plus fully voiced cinematics. Players join Rayman and friends on a new adventure.
Ubisoft's new strategy is to make old games
There
super
are
good.
4 all-new musical
Not new
stages,
games.
like MC Hammer's You Can't Touch This, and
Oh.
tonight we have your first look and listen to another musical stage.
Oh no, I really hate that. Why did they turn Rayman into a music game, that, which it shouldn't have been? I grew up on this game and on the first Rayman, and I've been playing it with friends from school hours and hours every day. And they really ruined it by making it like a rhythm game instead of a side-scrolling, regular side-scroller game.
October 1st, Rayman will be at the Ubisoft booth this week here at Gamescom. That's what makes this show so great, is that many of tonight's games will be playable to fans who are joining us live in person here in Germany all weekend. Still to come at O&L, the worldwide reveal of The Witcher 3's new expansion, Final Fantasy VII Revelation, and a performance of the music of Eugenics for the first time anywhere. Okay, I'm really... It's time for our next announcement.
The music from Eugenics was not good. I mean, it wasn't too bad either. It was original, but it wasn't good. Switch to prismatic real quick, because I'm taking a beating here.
I think this might be an extracted beating. I can tell. Yeah. The simulator. Yeah. Oh, now it's definitely a
Explore breathtaking, strange world.
Remember whenever I got on that?
Slave? They're called slaves. Siren Head, you asked them for fun. Free on console?
But that's not a new game.
Right? What the fuck? Okay, wait. No, I didn't play that game again. I love that game.
Once Human is a really good game, but it gets boring after a while.
This is like, bro. I'm gonna play Fall Guys. It's kind of good, right? That's cool. Devil May Cry? Yeah, it's kind of like that. What is the Dawn Walker?
That's a grain of truth. Seven feet tall, facts, not sales.
What is this? It's a romance novel?
For redemption, I have
None of us has any love for the Brigade. This one, he's different. The sun didn't take him. When this comes out, I'm not a big fan of Calendar. Let's break it down. I didn't like it in Metaphor or Persona, but I'll play it anyway. If you like Witcher 3, you're gonna probably play this game. That's really what it seems like to me. I haven't played it though. Let's begin. That's the way that goes. Shit.
Welcome everybody to Gamescom opening night live. Now, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan, so I'm very happy to share
Aren't they making like a
this
action
next
game?
game with you. The gameplay of the forthcoming strategy game, Game of Thrones War for Westeros.
Oh my god. There's actually a fucking... I'm gonna have to pause this. Okay, so they're coming out with a Game of Thrones computer game. The series isn't even finished. George R. Martin hasn't even released the second to last book. What is it gonna be based on? The HBO show that they had to rush to fucking finish in the one of the most notoriously bad endings of any show ever? What is the game gonna be based on? Game of Thrones is a joke of a franchise right now. What the fuck? Who gives a fuck about Game of Thrones? What?
The Iron Throne sounds empty.
Oh my fucking god.
We're trying to make an RTS.
They're trying to make an RTS, and the characters in the RTS look like the actors in Game of Thrones rather than the characters in the books of A Song of Ice and Fire. Oh my god. So it's like they're trying to milk the positive feelings, the hypothetical positive feelings the audience has with the show. But nobody likes the show. Everybody hated it. It was a joke. It was one of the worst shows in all of television because of how it ended. Oh my fucking god. The Night King isn't a real character. Oh, and I forgot to go pee.
Darksiders Genesis. This is a new self-funded and published indie title where you escape from a failing orbital prison in this gritty sci-fi isometric action thriller.
Pretty sci-fi
This is
isometric
Dust
action
Origins.
thriller.
I like isometric games, so let's see. And even in more particular, I like sci-fi isometrics.
Really good. Like I say, a lot. Our status is to get more popular. See, based off of that, I might try to. It's just okay. It's not great. It's not really my style. No, it's just. Not the guy.
Oh wait, I finished something here.
So this isn't Jack Goyslop. This game's not Goyslop. You'll know Goyslop when you see it. The Game of Thrones game was Goyslop.
Almost fucked up and took this guy. Just because Ogre Ruffian looks a little bit like Bloodbreaker.
No way, it's Krypton. It's too early. They'll probably do it
It's too early, but Crimson Desert was too early to make a enhanced version of the game.
Screen and reality.
conditioning.
Heartbeat restored. Synchronization complete. No longer playing. You are logged in.
Oh my god, this millennial slop is so bad.
Why would you do this 40 minutes into the show?
Cinematic single-player action RPG.
Like, I don't get it.
Of the Coast, set
Like,
in
shouldn't
the
you have done this
far
at the beginning of the
future sci-fi
show?
universe. In Exodus, you rise from
Why do you describe a game as a cinematic game? That just means that it's not a game, doesn't it?
Along the way, you assemble a crew of sharp-edged
What do we do?
soldiers, smugglers, mercs, scholars, and awakened animals whose skills and chemistry shape every fight and decision. Tonight, it's time to get a deeper look at Soul, an awakened octopus and mercenary who joins your team. Get a glimpse into who she is, where she comes from, and why she's along for the adventure.
It's a female octopus.
The fact that it's from Wizards of the Coast means that I'm not gonna buy this game ever.
That's really stupid. I'm
It's Wizards of the Coast. There should be no surprise that it's stupid. And the graphics look so bad. And again, the shitty, pathetic Saki voice acting.
Actually makes sense, like, especially how smart they are. Try.
Octopi.
Wait, isn't this another reference from like a game that I would think? Yeah. No, bro, this game looked amazing. If this is what I think it was, excellent. No. It's so weird that it's not
There we
millennial.
have it, the long-awaited release date for Exodus. It is coming in
For
April
eggs, yeah.
2027. Now to give us a
35-year-old woman
extended
POV.
first look at the gameplay for the upcoming Warlock Dungeons and Dragons for Wizards of the Coast and Invoke in Montreal, Canada. Please.
Oh, that wasn't Wizards of the Coast. This is going to be.
Incredible. Matthew Anderson.
All I do is just sit around and talk shit. I'm really actually.
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
Speaking of Wizards of the Coast, I think I started hating them from the moment they forced Cipsoft to change the name from Beholder to Boner Lord.
That act is made with Tasha, an ancient witch queen, and the patron I have the pleasure of playing.
Oh my fucking god, a girl-centric game, I should have known.
Tonight, we're revealing gameplay for the first time, showing how Katri wields magic as she explores the world of Darkon. This is Warlock.
This is going to be so garbage. I'm looking forward to this. To how shitty this is going to be. Ew! PS2 graphics. So far, there's 0 men in the trailer.
already two women talking on the screen. Like I'm already. Oh, this is getting this awful stretched out.
I mean, it's Wizards of the Coast. What did you expect? It's gonna be woke garbage, woke fucking absolute bullshit trash. They made Black Aragorn. They ruined Magic the Gathering. The game world looks like absolute horseshit. This is gonna flop. 0 men in the trailer still so far.
That's the new one.
Wow.
Okay.
I mean, it's a game for girls. You shouldn't expect them to be able to figure out. Oh, they did say it's a cinematic-based game, so yeah, everything here is cinematic, and every ability that the character has is curated for a specific challenge or thing that they have to go through. So kind of like God of War.
Okay, that was cool. You can like switch faces for something else. All right, that's cool.
I did not see a single male or man in the trailer. I've seen like maybe a male dragon.
I think they can do this in real life. Most of them look like Cheetos too. Because if they were ugly, no guy would put up with it. So annoying. Every hot girl is into astrology and other magic bullshit.
I wouldn't call the main character here a hot girl.
It's like an open world. It's like
Shit.
it's okay. This game looks like a 7 right now.
It looks like a 4 right now.
Stick off. By 50%. Didn't that do be good? Not to hit for difficulty, it just feels slow.
Feels slow because it's a cinematic game. Oh, what the fuck?
Well, that's cool. I like.
Oh,
that.
I didn't empty my backpack from last time. Damn it.
it's really smart. And they're creative. I like this.
This game is not gonna it's gonna have like a few thousand players at most, and then it's gonna die.
It comes from the new NBC Game Studio, which is debuting this game on the Gamescom show floor. Here, 1001 Threads of Messiah.
Worlds at war.
No way. Right? There's no way, right? I don't want to sound racist, but I can tell based off of the girls' names.
The Jin.
Another game with a female lead. Princess of Persia.
Two worlds collide as they wage a war of vengeance. Yet, many stories remain untold.
Ow, 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 ow. That hurt. Oh, no wonder.
This game looks like it could be cool, but I don't think they're gonna lock it in with this one. It just doesn't seem like the style of it. It feels very
Gay.
I feel like oh, it's Silver Power.
Another female lead.
Wow. She's wearing socks, censored. Gotcha, open world. This is like, if you like Zenless Zone Zero, these animations. It's all tutorial. Or that long series. I'm assuming you fight him later though.
The final clue is in that cursed place.
Does look better. So, wait, what? Wait, I'm so confused. Is that another hit or something? Like, I don't know what it looked like.
Is this the fourth game with a female lead in a row? Think so.
Now and next returning to the legendary Metro series, and a very special developer, Foray Games based in Ukraine. In development now, they build games all sorts of
I actually like the Metro games.
big dish.
Tell us more about their incredible story and journey of perseverance to create Metro 2039. Please join me in welcoming to the O&L stage John Block and Pavel Umer from 4A Games.
This is it for me. This is the game.
Two more laps, I think.
Be a part of it. Thank you so much. I'm John Block, executive producer for Metro 2039. And I'm Pavel Ulmer, co-creative director and audio lead. Tonight, we are revealing a brand new gameplay trailer for Metro 2039. The next chapter, set in the Metro universe we have been exploring for nearly 2 decades. Metro has always been a story about preventing war, but now that war is at our doorstep, we have built a story about its consequences and what it takes to survive.
Don't tell me about the consequences of war. I mean, it's a post-apocalyptic game. That is the consequence of war.
Devastated ruin, but Metro to us, some people, what they protect, what they sacrifice,
Ooh.
what remains of them.
No, for me, it's about shooting zombies.
They have their whole new
Interesting.
Stay with us every stage of development.
The bombs.
And if you're lucky enough to be here at Gamescom, you can go hands-on with Metro 2039 at our booth and take a closer look on a fully wearable replica Spartan helmet that will be included in our collector's edition.
Special operations been going on for 4 years. Our special operations only been going on for 6 months.
Metro 2039 is not simply a return to Metro. It is a darker, more ambitious, and deeply personal journey. One that will challenge what you know about yourself and what you're prepared to become in order to survive.
Dude, stop giving me this fucking retarded philosophical bullshit fluff. Tell me about the game, not about what I'm supposed to feel.
Welcome to Metro 2039. Slava Ukraini!
Looks amazing, though.
Girl, I really do.
All the Metro games looked really good, but this one is really they outdid themselves here.
It's gonna be radiation in this game.
Oh, no shit. Are you telling me that the nuclear post-apocalypse game is going to have radiation? No way.
It's amazing. Every single character in these games is a 40-year-old bald man.
Oh yeah, that was the 5th game, and it had no female lead after 4 games in a row with a female lead.
Studio game that now it's time for this vibe. It's so good. Oh! Oh, I thought it was a people. I'm getting worried. Who was it, Snoop Dogg? I just had a feeling, bro. I just had a feeling.
Thank you, Cyrus. That's perfect. Well done. That is Dr. Cyrus Kane, the big dog, as it were. An entrepreneur and eccentric man.
Wait, who invaded my spot right now? Who's this guy? Let's see who he is, because I saw somebody following. What are these guys doing?
Next up, Sky is no longer the limit. From NC, this is Ion 2, the sequel to Ion.
Oh, this is an
MMO built around aerial combat on a massive scale. It launches October 5th this year.
Why are they bringing up so much shit in October? Swap? Let's see if it's swap. It's looking like swap.
What are these guys fucking doing here?
That's cool. I'm really afraid that it's gonna look like getting so strong. Yeah, this is like Lost Ark, but it's not adventure. No, they think that, yeah. I'm not out. And for me to say that about an MMO is a huge compliment. To say that I'm not immediately out. Back. This is what's going to happen because all the data centers are going to get rid of all the water. Maybe it's not that bad. They don't have flowers to have that, but okay. That's Dutch Trump after his 19th term. Yeah, I'm gonna be real. Like that's what
I was gonna leave before my booking ended, but these fuckers make me actually want to stay here for even longer. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do.
right. I'm gonna play on both sides. So they make this badass like Wukong level game, and then make this bullshit anime thing too. That's great. I'm starting to get the feeling that I'm not the target audience for this game.
Ow! What the fuck? My game's dropping either frames or something, and I wasn't able to heal or UE. Perfect. And now I'm gonna kill this guy so there's no chance that they could actually benefit from this, because fuck these guys. If they weren't assholes, I would actually leave this to the next person, because I don't need it. Okay, let's start picking up my loot. And let me log out real quick before they actually destroy my stamina. And I'll also end the stream here. Have a good one, everybody.